Jones, and I'm here to tell you folks, the world has fallen. The fascist globalist overlords, they're implementing the Great Reset. You don't believe me? I've seen the tapes. Watch it, folks. Watch as these pot-bellied Zoomer goblins work with the Illuminati to pit us against each other. I promise I'd be a good boy.
I'm a good boy.
There's only one cure, folks, and that's liberty. And there's no better channel to find freedom than Fabian Liberty. Anarchy is order. Government is civil war.
You're offensive. Police lives matter?
We're just trying to do school.
What?
You guys have the same sticker as the other.
But this is our space. You're making the space uncomfortable. But you're white.
You're fucking a white male!
What is one way you combat racism? I don't root for white people on the sidewalk.
They want your wallets, they want your guns, they want the wieners off your sons. Democrats.
Oh no, we should film it.
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman! Vaccine!
Children, they're spreading COVID throughout the population at higher numbers. And people are not entitled to turn themselves into deadly biological weapons by spraying disease-laden aerosols wherever they choose, randomly killing innocent people. This is not freedom, this is homicide, and willful ignorance is no excuse.
What the fuck?
aggressive, though I'm starting to think he might have had help from the Russians.
Look at me, I'm a gay bro. I'm so cool, I'm so neat. I'll never have children and I'm sterilized. But the media says I'm totally cool, I'm a gay bro.
All right, boys. It was a spur of the moment that I decided to go live. I figured, fuck it, why not go live on YouTube? I never do. So if you see low numbers in here, Shungite, you're like, we're only in single digits. Yeah, I didn't tell anybody I was gonna go live. I mean, I threw it in the Discord as I went live, but I just figured, fuck it, like instead of pimping Stardust stream, I might as well, you know, hop on stream. We don't ever stream on Sunday nights unless we're doing philosophy reading nights on Twitch. If you're seeing this on YouTube, follow us at twitch.tv /Fabian Liberty. That is where we do primarily almost all of our content. However, the really good stuff, some of the interviews and some of the debate topics that I really like, that I like just kind of have fun with, they'll get thrown on here. Some of the drama stuff gets thrown on here. Some of the stuff that I need to save for later gets thrown on here. And occasionally on this YouTube, I have little side projects that I get around to finishing, such as like the myth of racial homogeneity, or like certain anarcho-capitalist or anarchist videos. For the most part, a majority of our content is on Twitch. You can also find us on Rumble. But, you know, if you're here, thanks for stopping by. So this is where I normally have like a really engaging chat and we go back and forth. But now I'm just going to sip my tea. I'm going to sip my fucking tea and enjoy hot English breakfast tea. Been quitting soda. It's been rough. Been quitting energy drinks. It's been rough. And I just had both of my toddlers, one of whom is autistic, over for the entire weekend. I am exhausted. But I really liked this debate topic, and that's the only reason I chose to accept this debate on this day. Normally, I would tell people, go fuck yourself. I'm relaxing on a Sunday night. But you know what? Fuck it. We're here for the smoke. And here any second now, I'm going to hop into Stardust's panel, and it should be fun. For those of you that are here, thanks for stopping by. Also, I would like to say, I fucking hate the way OBS works with YouTube. It works so much better with fucking Twitch. Like integrated chat. I don't need my third monitor to have a chat bar. Yeah, Samariana, apparently, like, even though I logged out of Twitch on OBS, it still showed up as it's still multi-streamed. So like I had to cut it off and then restart it. And then of course it had 2 YouTube live streams. I don't know what to tell you. I don't ever go live on YouTube. I don't fuck with YouTube like that. So I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just being a YouTube boomer. I would like a continuation of the racial homogeneity series. I plan on doing New Orleans, Louisiana and the Acadians and the Creole Coon-ass and the Cajun at some point. I already have some of that worked out, some of that research, but I need to do more research and write a good script. Just haven't had time. I've been doing, streaming, working on Twitch and stuff, like somewhere between, 8 to 12 hours a day between all of the different social media and stuff. Yeah, YouTube streaming sucks. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so we're gonna hop in there, and it should be fun. What time is it? 7:57. All right, we'll go hop in the lobby. And she says, "Hop in the lobby." And all right, let's go. What's going on? What's going on with the debate topic? What do you mean what's going on? Okay, Andrew. So I just figured, fuck it. I'd just go live on YouTube. Why not? I wasn't gonna go live on YouTube. I was just gonna like hop on the SuperNova because I had my kids this weekend. But I figured, fuck it, why not? I occasionally need to do like the occasional YouTube. So the topics are like, should kink be at Pride? And the other one is talking about drag queen shows, especially like the drag your kids to Pride. And so Dooby and I were like going hard on Twitter, and Zonia was like, we should debate this. And I was like, all right, let's go. And then they suggested today, and I was like, oh, go fuck yourself. But whatever, fuck it, I'll go live on YouTube. I used your first one to own an alt-writer? What? Is this anticipation of a Twitch ban? I mean, being in Twitch politics.
I'm not here to aid him in
if you're going in Twitch politics, you're gonna be banned off of YouTube at some. I mean, off of Twitch at some point. What's up?
Hello.
Yo, I'm fucking exhausted.
Why are you exhausted?
Well, because I have an autistic son, and I watched both my toddlers this weekend. I like would not have accepted this date. Like usually this is like 100% my day off. But the topic, like people seemed really excited about it, and it already got pushed back a week. So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. But hopefully this English breakfast tea is enough to spur me on to some hatred of the left. We'll see what happens.
Paste.
Cool.
Oh, my Melungeon video? Yeah, that's pretty good.
Hello?
I also randomly decided, I was like, fuck it, I'll go live on YouTube. I never go live on YouTube. It's like the second time I've ever done it. And I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, I'll just like throw it in Discord. Whoever shows up, shows up. And of course, I logged out, but I didn't realize that you can't just log out of Twitch. Like, you have to log out of Twitch, and then when you hit go live, you have to un-go live. And people were like, why am I getting a notification that you're on fucking Twitch right now? You're not on, like, you're not streaming this Sunday, I thought. And I was like, God damn it. So then I undid it, like, in stream, came back, and then there's, like, 2 simultaneous live streams running. I was just like, yo, I fucking hate YouTube streaming. I'm not gonna lie. It's such a shit show.
The gifted memberships that are going out are like a real game changer. A friend of mine has like tripled his income in a week.
Nice. Well, you know what would be a game changer? You know, just doing all of the shit that Twitch already does that works. Can you just do that? Like, I don't know, integrate your fucking chat into OBS. That'd be nice, so I don't need all 3 of my fucking monitors. That'd be cool.
Yep.
I don't even know how to use all the Twitch features because I use YouTube more. So I don't even know. I'm not even involved.
Yo, you're missing out, man. Channel points are a fucking game changer. You want to talk about a game changer?
Yeah.
I tried bringing my audience to do channel points, but they thought they were donating when they were doing it. So they're like, here's 100 channel points. Enjoy this. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, but like, I mean, like my stream has like videos that play and like sound alerts. So like, like that pop up on the screen that are like part of the communities, and like AMAs, and, like Ideas by Mark, where I immediately like play fucking like some fucking classical music, and he just says some wild shit, or like it's very interactive, and like a lot of that functionality just isn't there for YouTube. It's just fucking boring. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta get used to YouTube because I'm Twitch politics, which means eventually I'll get banned off Twitch.
Yeah, eventually it'll be your main.
Right, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We're preparing here. We're preparing for it. After like 2 different people were like, "Here's how you report Stardust." I was like, "All right, it's probably a good idea for me to."
How have I not been banned? At least, how have I not received a weekend ban? Like, I am watching all of you lefties in the Twitch politics space, like go at each other, get mad at each other. And meanwhile, I'm interviewing Buck Angel. I'm interviewing D-trans men. I'm fucking like, watching banned BBC documentaries. I'm just going fucking hard. And people are like, who's the #1 enemy of trans people with 10 more viewers on average than him? Rob Noor. Let's take him out. It's like, fucking, all right, like fucking go attack Rob Noor. I don't care. Like, I'm going to chill over here being fucking wild.
Rob Noor's been an excellent friend of the show. Yeah,
I like
don't know
Robin.
what it is, man. I don't know what it is.
I think it's
but,
because they don't think they can poach an audience off of me, because my audience is like hardcore libertarian and they wouldn't fucking watch any of you lefties no matter what you do. Whereas like
Well,
your
when you
audience
say
can
you
be
lefty-
poached.
Okay, my audience is also. I don't think it's that poachable. I don't think my audience is that poachable. Maybe
No, I just mean like if you got banned, right? Like there's a certain percentage of your audience that would like go to other like left-wing Twitch politics people.
Maybe. You're calling me left wing when all of them call me like a neo-Nazi. So
It's
you
okay.
understand
It's okay. You're a
confusing
lefty.
to me.
It's all right. You're a lefty.
Okay.
Trust.
I'm gonna be a few minutes delayed here, so
No problem.
Yeah. Good to see you all, though.
Yeah, good to see you all as well.
Kink isn't a choice.
Thank you for joining
What?
me. This is the first time I've
Engaging
ever
in
done
it
this,
around
and it's
children
not
is,
been
though.
15 minutes past 8 o'clock, and people are still like getting in. So I really appreciate that.
Yo, I'm exhausted and I'm here on time. Like, what's up? Like, I'm always here on time. You ought to
Well,
invite me
I
more
appre-
often. I got to get my YouTube numbers up.
I appreciate you, Fabian, Liberty, Scott. I will invite you more often. Right. So, okay. Welcome.
Breeder kink is not a
Why
choice.
does this
Yes.
always start off so fucking awkward? Why is it always like this? Welcome. Thank you for joining me for another Supernova. Every Sunday, I do Supernova. It's like the semi-blood sports, but semi-casual stream panel that I do. I appreciate you guys joining me. This is, yes, Dooby. What's wrong?
Facts.
So I expect this conversation to annoy me a lot. So is it okay if I have
Yes.
a beer or two during?
Yeah, go right ahead. I don't.
Sunday
I can't
fun
even
day,
tell.
bro. Come on.
All right. Thank you for interrupting my introduction,
welcome.
Dooby. I really appreciate it. Okay. So, like I was saying, welcome once again to another Supernova, semi blood sports, semi casual, where things inevitably get out of hand for some reason, one reason or the other. I don't know why. Hopefully nobody gets swatted this time. No, I'm just kidding.
You
I'm
jinxed
joking.
us. That was kind of
I'm
fucked up.
Oh, jeez. Okay, all right. Right. So today's topic. Usually I have 3 topics for each show, but today's topic, I figure this one's pretty spicy. Probably will take up all of our time. Drag your kids to Pride. Do you think it is having children around drag shows and vice versa, having drag shows around children? Do you think it is inappropriate? Or do you think it's perfectly fine, completely appropriate? Or are you somewhere else? I guess we'll just, we'll get started. We'll go around with people introducing themselves, giving like a general stance. Don't take too fucking long. Oh, also a couple
You're combining
rules
the
before we-
intro with the first topic? All right.
You know what? Fine. We'll go with intros first, and then we'll come back around, okay? If that will make you happier, Fabian. Also, a couple rules to lay out for you guys is that I do this thing, apparently people call it rage moderation, where I yell at everybody. Please don't take it personally. I'm probably going to yell at you at some point in this. No personal feelings involved. Okay, let's start off with the introductions. Critical Canadian. You're the top, lucky top left person. So, why don't you introduce yourself? Why are you shaking your head?
I swear to God, if I could have renamed myself, I'd pick like Z, because every time I'm always the one with the first letter, so I'm always first, but that's okay. I'm Critical Canadian. What's happening? I talk pretty much anything that I want. We do a little bit of gaming, a little bit of politics, a little bit of ideas, and we just kind of chill and hang out.
Thanks. Dooby.
Yeah, I'm Dooby from the politics server on Discord, where we will be hosting an AMA with Roger Stone on Tuesday. Roger Stone is probably the most influential, most relevant political person any of you will ever have the opportunity to speak to ever. So if you want to be there, if you want to talk to him, you're more than welcome. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Should be amazing. All of you on the panel are welcome to hop in and let me know if you want to ask him a question.
Cool. Fabian Liberty. Scott.
Yes, I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. We are the... I mean, it's not much of a brag, but it's a brag I'll take nevertheless. The largest anarcho-capitalist channel in Twitch politics. We do news reactions, some, I guess, light journalism where we dig into, companies' financials and things like that, and try and track down stories. We do philosophy reading night. We do the occasional late night fun videos. Tuesday, if you're not going to go see Roger Stone, I don't know why you wouldn't. We'll be doing a charity stream for Gamers for Love and a panel with a bunch of people from Twitch Politics. We do a lot of interviews here lately, and a lot of those interviews are on my YouTube, trying to have something on YouTube occasionally. So you can see the Buck Angel interview, D-Trans interview. We interviewed Senate candidate Jeremy Kaufman and stuff like that. So, come around if you're really interested in hardcore libertarian politics.
Cool. Okay. Next on the list, Papa Gut.
Okay. All right. So I'm Papa Gut. I have to say the first thing that's really bothering me is that 3 white cisgendered men came on and they didn't identify their pronouns to create a comfortable space for everybody else.
My pronouns are they, them, or landlords. Please
Okay,
address me
very
as
good.
landlord.
That's it. I'm Papa Gut. That's it. Fat online. There you go.
Same.
There you go.
Pixie.
Hi, I'm Pixie, she, her. You can find me on twitch.tv/pixiesgrove. I don't really do this a lot. I have a career in gaming because I like making more inclusive gaming because I think games are poggers and everyone should enjoy them. Yeah. Hi.
Hello. Rose Moulet?
Moulet, you got it. You didn't say mullet, so that's a plus. My name is Rose Moulet. I'm a transgender woman. I run a YouTube channel. Most recently, I've been known for debating both Destiny and Vosh, and in both of those debates, I mentioned drag queens had some interesting takes. So when I saw this, I know I had to hop on. So yeah.
Cool. Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick. Keffels would probably say I'm fascist adjacent. I'm a professional Pokemon streamer, and I'm a retired YouTuber who tweets all day.
Cool. Zonia. If she is here.
Hey guys.
I love when someone's like, I've
I'm
debated
Zonia,
Destiny
and
and
I
Vosh.
am
No,
a-
Destiny and Vosh wanted to bring you
I
on
don't
to
know
make
what I
fun
am.
of it.
You all know who I am now. If you want to follow me on Twitch, Zonia Dead. You can also follow me on YouTube. I'm going to be streaming on YouTube this Tuesday. I'll plug my channel in the chat at some point. Just search for Zonia. You'll probably find me. And this Tuesday, I'm going to be on Scott's charity stream. In addition to that, I'm also going to be at some point dipping out from that to go to the Roger Stone AMA to ask some questions of Roger Stone. So I will be streaming for that. And otherwise, I'll be probably, I don't know, I represent sort of the left-leaning side of this as a trans person. So anyways.
Cool. I'm Stardust. Half of the people online call me a raging, screeching SJW. The other half call me a neo-Nazi fascist. So, which one am I? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay, let's go around now. Because Fabian wanted to make it this way, and it's very awkward, we're going to go around now, and everybody's going to give their opinions on children and drag shows. Scott, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so children shouldn't be in drag shows. I think that is such a silly and weird thing that we're even debating this, that the culture has moved so far in the direction of, diversity, inclusion, equity, and that, the neo-Marxist philosophy has infected us to such a degree that we believe that something that is inherently sexual, that is inherently engaged in kind of bending the ideas around gender, that's history is deeply sexual, is something that we are wondering whether or not children should be at. I don't care if it's a tame drag show. I don't care if it's drag queen story hour. The idea that heteronormativity is somehow a bad thing in a biological species where 99.9% of us are not actually transgender is insane. It's stupid, right? Heteronormativity is normal for a fucking reason. And the idea that we would engage with our children being in scenarios where they're going to be confused and kind of like exposed to something that is inherently sexual as opposed to just relationships is not a celebration of LGBT. It's Marxist praxis.
Okay, Dooby.
I agree with just about everything Scott said, but also if you disagree, I'm not calling you a groomer, but you're trying really hard to look like a groomer, and it's kind of sus.
Okay. I'm assuming Critical Canadian has a different opinion on this.
Let's go. All right. So I think looking at the history of drag, I think it's really interesting that when we focus on this conversation, we only end up talking about drag queens, and we kind of totally miss drag kings. I think when you look at drag and you look at drag kings and what they're kind of looking to achieve, how they flamboyantly take male gender and put it onto display in a very movie character-esque kind of way, it makes sense that the contrast to that, the drag queens are also going to end up doing that. When we look at the history of drag and how it started kind of like in Greek times to allow men to perform as women on stage, I don't think it is sexual. I'm kind of going to stop there because I kind of want to get into the conversation and kind of see where people go from there. So,
Okay, let's go to Papa Gut.
All right. So personally, I think we're not taking it far enough. I think that for an educational perspective, we should make it mandatory to do drag inside of schools, and it could also double as physical education as well. It could be an elective. I'm just kidding. My humor is very dry. This is my second joke that's bombed, so I had to test the audience, okay? So generally speaking, I'm not personally particularly comfortable with the idea of my kid going to a drag show. I think that everybody could probably agree there were some aspects of the specific Drag the Kids event that was overly sexual. For instance, it's not going to lick itself in the wall, things of that nature. However, I don't think that drag historically is fundamentally sexualized in general. Most of the time, it's just about gay dudes dressing up like girls to honor, most of the time, musicians. And that's mostly what it was there. I find it a little interesting that we have a really big problem when it comes to sexualization, when it comes to a drag queen impersonating Dua Lipa, but we don't give a shit that Dua Lipa is showing her ass on stage. There does seem to be a little bit of a double standard here. So,
All right, Pixie.
So yeah, I don't know. Some drag stuff is absolutely sexualized, not okay, because it's just meant for certain environments. But there's nothing inherently sexual or wrong about like dress up in fun costumes. And I don't know, it seems pretty fun to like out of the glitter and stuff. It seems decent. Yeah, just because you're confused doesn't mean kids are.
Cool, Rose.
Being a transgender woman myself, I'm sure people have assumptions about that. I'm actually very against drag. I think drag is bad for trans women because it's mocking women and trans women specifically. I mean, these men get to get home and be cisgender men, whereas trans women have to suffer throughout their entire lives. So we have to deal with that, right? But when you talk about drag in front of kids, I mean, this is especially despicable because this is something that is purely an adult act being performed in adult spaces. And obviously, I don't think it's okay.
Okay. Zonia, did you want to weigh in next?
Sure. Yeah, so I think it all depends on the conditions and the environment, all the other factors around it. I think drag, I agree with Pixie that drag on its own is not inherently sexual. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's gender bending and can go in either direction. You have drag queens and drag kings, as was mentioned before. And I think based on what we saw in those videos, I think there was a lot in that environment that made that whole situation questionable. And I don't think that the drag and all the things playing into it in that environment was appropriate for kids. The kids giving money to the drag dancers in a bar type environment, right? So I think that outside of that kind of space, in a more innocent kind of just gender bending approach, I don't think it's inappropriate at all. I think it's perfectly fine.
And last but not least, Nick.
Okay, when I took this panel, I initially forgot that it was a politics panel. So for 2 days, I was trying to desperately figure out a position to have on this. Because I don't usually do politics. I usually do like YouTube drama and stuff like that. So as a result, I'm not really married to a position of whether drag is inherently sexual or not. As everyone's kind of given their speech, I've heard kind of both sides of that so far, and I'm sure we'll dive deeper into that as we go. I guess my biggest issue with a lot of this stuff is that I don't think that kids should be going to bars. I don't know if they should be going to the more sexualized like drag events and stuff like that where they have signs saying like it's not going to lick itself. I don't think they should be going to Hooters. I don't think that kids should be going around anything that is inherently sexual. So if it's deemed inherently sexual, yeah, I'm against it. I worked alongside a drag queen at a supermarket. Obviously, they weren't in drag, but for 5 years. So I learned a lot about like Fire Island culture in Long Island. I heard a lot about kind of just like the everyday thing because this is somebody I worked close with. And yeah, I think I know a little bit. Every time they would come in drag to work before they went off or whatever, it seemed like it was done in a like sexualized manner per se. I don't know if that's like my one drag person I've ever spoken to, or that's like a wider scope. But yeah, if it is sexual, I don't think the kids should be around it. If it's not sexual, then I don't really necessarily have an issue with it, depending on how it's performed at the given event or venue.
All right. Okay, so I guess we'll just open it up then for anybody who wants to say anything, I guess.
Can I ask what makes it sexual? For everybody on the panel that it says it is sexual, I'm just kind of curious on what particularly makes it sexual for you.
Right. So, I mean, the reason that I would say it is inherently sexual is not necessarily, I think we need to kind of split that word into two pieces, right? Because I think there is, when you hear sexual, I think there is an assumption that you're talking about sexuality, right? That you're talking about sexual in the sense that you are shaking your ass or that you're showing off secondary sexual characteristics in like a provocative way. Or primary. I mean, if you want to go that far, right? I mean, I'm certain some drag shows have gone that far, but usually drag shows have always been more in the vein of burlesque. But there's another portion of that, which is the what has been referenced here is like the gender bending aspect. And when I say it's inherently sexual, that is what I'm talking about, right? I am talking about the idea that it is playing with the ideas of gender and sex to children that are not necessarily capable of having formed full opinions on sexuality and on as well gender. And when you are taking a biological male and they're dressing and performing usually in extremely feminized and over the top fashion, right, towards children, it is confusing. It is a means of attacking the gender roles. It is a means of attacking the idea of gender existing in many ways, and it has always been that way to play with those kind of boundaries of what gender is and isn't.
But gender is confusing for those of us who grow up with conflicting gender identities and sexual identities. It is confusing. So it's overall gender is a pretty confusing thing. Trying to pretend that it isn't and trying to keep it quiet and not allowing, for others to express that more openly in the presence of children isn't really going to change anything.
I'm not advocating to disallow anything. I want to make it very clear.
Yeah, but you want it hidden, right?
You're asking, when asking, there's a difference between what I want from a legal perspective and what I want from a moral perspective, right?
Well, think about it from this position. So like I grew up in a situation where I didn't really, I had a lot of confusion around my gender and sexuality and didn't really understand what it meant. It just seemed like there was something wrong with me, and there was no ability to relate that to anybody because it wasn't something we ever talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It was a couple, it was like 18 years later or so that I started to get some exposure to the LGBT community and to drag shows and stuff like that, and start to realize that, oh, well, it's not just me. There are others who have kind of experienced this as well, or who play around with gender bending, who do so flexibly. And it got me thinking, oh, interesting. I didn't even realize that this is an option, right? Because I grew up in a period where nobody talked about that stuff. It was kept completely quiet. And if you did talk about it, there was a good chance that you were going to get hurt or, like put in a mental institution or something. So it's, in a way, seeing the options, it made me realize, oh, it's not that there's something wrong with me. It's just that we don't talk about this and we try to hide it from kids growing up. We try to hide it and keep it quiet. So I feel like it's, in a way, it's almost like saying, well, no matter what you grow up with, no matter what your confusion is, we want to protect you from this other option that may actually be a good option for you, or may make you feel more at ease with your own body, etc.
So,
well, I have a
who's
follow-up
protecting
question
you from an option? I don't understand this, right? Like,
well, you might be. This is
You're an
This is the
outlier.
follow-up question I have, right? Like, let's say you have like your son is playing with like, you know, army little characters, whatever, a typical like a typical boy's toy. If your son was like, Daddy, I want to play with like the Barbie dolls, would you like stop your son from playing with that? Because you're like, no, that's not really a traditional boy toy. Like, you've got to play with like this kind of like area.
So I have a son and a daughter, right? They're both toddlers, and in the other room, I mean, I can bring it out. It's like a Cabbage Patch knockoff that we call Sarah, because it's just, I don't know, that's the name that we call it. And both of my children play with it. I don't care.
Okay, so like clothing too, like colors, things like that. You wouldn't care if your kid's like, you know, I want to wear like this shirt versus like, or maybe like a skirt or
No,
like
if
a
my
kilt
if
or
my
anything
if my
like that.
child if my child wants to play, I'm gonna let them play. If my child wants to explore who they are, I'm gonna let them explore who they are. Does that mean I'm gonna drag my kids to an event that is like, you know, based off of like the history of such and is overly sexualized and overly feminized and like try and force feed them as like some means of art before they're able to actually understand it? No, it's a different.
You called
it's a
the
totally
gender
different
bending
thing.
part the sexualization of it. Your child playing with something that isn't typically like for their gender is in a little bit of gender bending, right? That's why I asked you what was sexual about it.
No, that's not true.
It's not like you're hiding the female or the feminine toys and things from your son and hiding the masculine toys from your daughter, right? So
No.
you're
No,
allowing them
there's
to
a
see and
distinct
experience
Question
it
regarding
and make
this,
their
guys,
choice.
I think we also have to kind of ask, is cross-dressing itself drag, right? Because I think we're kind of approaching that area where we're talking about
No.
the difference between
I would expect
cross-dressing and
I would expect
and-
everyone that's on this panel today to have done at least a little monicum of research, right? Like, there has been cross-dressing and there have been men playing women and women playing men, you know, from ancient Greece all the way up to vaudeville, right? But when we speak about drag, we're specifically talking about a movement that started in the mid 1800s in America that was in nightclubs, that was illegal underground facilities of gay bars and things of that nature, that was very risque and burlesque and very sexual in nature.
Well, it was
and
above
now
ground in German bars.
and
it was
now
it was a thing.
Okay, sure, but the first person to call themselves a drag queen, the title of drag, right? This is something that started in America. Were there other forms of
true.
similar things throughout
Female
history?
impersonation was the
Yeah,
what
female
was
impersonation,
broadly
right.
referred to before that.
Right, and of course, in the LGBT community, hid themselves in vaudeville because it was one of the few areas that they were safe, and they could perform and they could engage in those things. And part of the reason why the LGBT community is so still deeply connected to the arts. But when we're talking about drag, we're talking about something that historically was very sexual in nature, and as time has gone on, as acceptance has occurred, right, has become less sexual in some places.
I think the argument that you know, there's a certain portion of the population, whether it's 1% or 2%, whatever it is, that are actually in the future going to be struggling with their gender identity and their sexuality, right? So that fact means that we should expose children to these sorts of things, because there's a more than 0% chance that in the future they're gonna have questions about this stuff, and being exposed to that kind of thing young might help them cope with that. Sure, I think that makes sense if like that's your framework, but I think where that kind of falls apart is there are plenty of other things, right, that a certain portion of the population is going to struggle with in their life, i.e. zoophilia, right? There is like 3% of the population are zoophiles. They are sexually, well, I'll get to that. Yeah, there's another study in the 40s that estimated to be around like 7%.
Talk about this too much as Vosh
But
is
the
going
one
to
in
jump on.
But the most recent one that I found says that in 2021, they estimated about 3% of the population in the United States are zoophiles. They have some kind of sexual attraction to animals.
Really?
Like actual animals.
Poor animals.
It's much
Poor furry
higher
people.
among furries, by the way. I think it's like 20% among furries. And that's like animals. Yeah.
That
That's like
sucks 'cause I really
animal
like
animals.
furries.
I think like 80. I think it's like 80% of furries have sexual attraction to anthropomorphic animals. Right? So like, yeah. It's pretty.
Well, they're
I really like
furries.
furries.
That shouldn't be that.
Yeah,
I like furries. And I love their
Okay,
art
okay.
too.
Well, hold on. Let me.
Okay.
I'd like to finish.
Not
the
the
part really
kinky
quick.
stuff though, or
Yeah.
the sexy
Go
stuff.
ahead.
But I like
So-
their normal art.
But I think most of us would agree. I hope that it wouldn't be reasonable to expose children, especially preteen children, to like humans having sex with animals, right, or any kind of like romantic or sexual interactions with animals, because you know in the future they might feel these things toward the animals and be like, oh god, you know, I'm some kind of monster. But you know, if they were to expose to this young, they might understand they have some paraphilia and they actually just need like therapy or some shit, right? So I don't think it's true that I don't think
it's something where the other
I don't think so.
The other person can't consent.
I'd like to hold on. I'd like to. So first off, I don't think we care about animal consent at all, like as a culture. So I think that's weird.
We never have.
I do.
Yeah,
I think.
But going forward, given that we know that there is some aspect of what's the word I'm looking for? There's a very famous experiment, the Bobo experiment. I hope some of you guys are familiar with this.
I'm very familiar.
They put a bunch of children in front of a Bobo doll, and the children treated the doll the way that they saw adults treat the doll, right? So if the adults are aggressive toward the doll, the children would be aggressive toward the doll, right? And this is how we learn that, hey, children model their own behavior around what they see adults doing, around what they're exposed to, right? So if you're exposing very young children to this sort of stuff, you're going to have some of these children that will begin to imitate and model their own behavior around these things you're exposing them to, which is what they found in Sweden very recently. And they found that a lot of the children who were identifying as trans weren't actually trans. They were just there was like a social contagion happening, and they were being pushed to act this way. So they started identifying as trans, but actually they weren't trans, right? So they pulled back. They pulled back hard. There's a massive problem with that.
Well,
So they pulled back
the
hard.
problem with drag
on allowing these people.
I'm
Please,
sorry.
wait 1 second.
Let's let Dooby finish what he's saying here,
All right.
and then I'll open it up to you.
So they
next,
pulled back
okay?
hard on allowing these people, these children, access to things like puberty blockers and every other thing you'd get to like a trans person, right? Because if they weren't actually
God damn it, Angie, I love you.
But because they were presenting these things to them very young, or encouraging this, and there's a lot of like affirmation that you get within certain social spheres if you're trans or if you're genderqueer or a drag queen or drag kid or any of this kind of shit, right? Some of these children are gonna move in that direction, and this actually might be really unhealthy for them given all the other problems that come with this, right? So if you want somebody to say that, and now I'm a little bit different from Scott in that I don't have a problem with like children being exposed to like drag queens in the big dresses and all this sort of stuff, right? I think that's I put that on like the level of like clowns, right? Not in like a negative way. Clowns are performers and they're entertaining. The same way that drag queens are performers and entertaining, right? But the thing that we're talking about specifically, right, which is just like this nightclub or this bar, I think there's a very sexual performance, extremely inappropriate to allow children there, right? So yeah.
Wait, what was sexual about the performance? Wait, hold on.
I think if you need me to tell you what's sexual about the
no, hold on. I just want to know. Can you tell me what's sexual about the performance?
I don't know if you just haven't seen it, but
I have. Yeah.
Lay out a few things. Oh, well, then I don't know what you need me to tell you. Okay, well then I don't know what you need me to tell you.
Depends on the
So,
what was sexual about it? I want to hear your reasoning.
There are two options. There are two options you can present me with. So option one is you're going to do the Dr. Manhattan thing, where you try to break down every individual aspect.
I really just
and say, hey, no, what's sexual about licking? What's sexual about an ass cheek? Are tongues inherently sexual? God, I don't know. What's sexual about songs about having sex? Oh God, I don't know. Is that inherent? It's really stupid.
And
right?
you just
We're taking the entire thing
like inherently sexual in your opinion.
You're being an idiot. We're taking the entire thing in context, right? So in context, this was an event put forward and advertised for people to bring their children to.
Yeah.
And it was happening at a bar where they had a big ass neon sign that said it's not going to lick itself. Where they had people wearing very provocative outfits, doing the splits in front of children, dancing to songs about sex, taking dollar bills from the sex. This is a very like sexually charged atmosphere.
So can I ask you a question? Because I agree with some of that, but the whole dancing and whatnot. So like, do you have the same energy for like concerts where?
Yes. Why would you think I'd be okay with taking like a preteen to a WAP concert? Like, what
so like we'll use Dua Lipa because one of the drag people was imitating Dua Lipa. So are you saying that they're also like groomers as well?
If Dua Lipa advertised, said, "Hey, bring your children to my concert," and she was on stage with her ass out, yeah, absolutely. I said,
so is it just because there's specific advertisement to bring children there, or is it if they let children in there, is that also a problem?
Both things are a problem. I think it's more problematic that they advertise specifically. I think it's more problematic.
Kids go to her concert.
I think it's more problematic that they advertise specifically to children.
I agree with that. But you're
And
saying that Dua
hey,
Lipa.
bring your kids to this environment, and then the environment that they brought them to, it looks like a fucking strip club.
I just want to get this
Minus
clear.
nudity.
You're saying that Dua Lipa is a groomer for letting kids go to her concert and dancing.
I'm saying that it's inappropriate for adults.
Yeah, probably.
For adults to take children to sexually charged places and
You used the word
threaten other
groomer
adults.
before, I think, right? Or was it the other guy?
What was Scott that said that?
Oh, okay.
Well, hold
all
on.
right.
I actually never
think
said the word groomer.
I think if
but-
you're taking your children,
Oh,
I think
the word
please,
groomer.
wait 1 second. I think if you're
wait. We
I'd like
gotta.
to answer the
I'm sorry.
question
We
directly.
gotta. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, 2 things, real quick. Okay, I just got 2 super chats that were both telling me to tell Dooby that Roger Stone is watching him. I don't know what this means.
I love
but
Roger Stone.
watching
He's
your
my
every,
idol.
Every move.
Hey, Roger.
Okay, and then I do want you to finish what you're saying, Dooby. Hurry the fuck up, Dooby, okay? Because now people are
ma'am.
getting a little
Yeah.
restless, and everybody's talking over everybody.
And
so
I've been
hurry
wanting to
up,
chime in
Dooby.
for a while.
They can
now.
suck my dick in a non-sexual context. okay?
Ew, gross.
Not sexually, by the way. So yeah, again, if you're the problem is that they're advertising specifically to children. So yeah, I think it's totally inappropriate to take your children to that kind of place. And if you do, I think you are grooming them towards sexual activity and sexual behavior, because as for all of the reasons I just laid out about children imitating the shit that you expose them to.
Okay.
All right.
Sonia.
Dua Lipa's a groomer. I gotcha.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm glad you kind of corrected toward the end of your original spiel where you're talking about how kids being exposed to like drag, how we traditionally know it, isn't such a bad thing. It's more about the more sexually centered drag that you don't like, which I think you and I can both break bread on that one. I think I don't find that disagreeable, and that's kind of where my position is. Now, because I was going to push back and I was going to say, what is wrong with exposing kids to drag, even at an early age? You know, and like, what would be wrong if a kid decided to do like, sort of play around with a drag, you know, kind of thing, playing around with as a drag performance or something? Do you think that there's something inherently wrong with that? Like, if a young boy, say like 5 years old or something, saw a drag show, or saw a drag performance artist or something, and then wanted to kind of dress up and do it because they're like, oh, that's kind of a fun.
Well, I'd be
option.
worried about it confusing that kid about his gender, right? Which would be
Yeah.
my main issue, right? So
So-
I would be hesitant about doing it too early, but it really depends on the context, right? So because
I
we
think-
don't know how gender dysphoria starts, right? But we do know that children who are raised by LGBT parents are much more likely to be LGBT. So there's some social influence within like the scope like gender and sexuality and how they're expressed.
That
Right,
doesn't
so-
necessarily mean it's social.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
could just
there's
mean
some
that
influence.
that could just mean that they are more likely to be open and accepting.
Okay,
of,
if you
their
prefer
child being
if you
a little
prefer
different
not to
from
look at
everybody
that,
else.
right? Like you can just
Right.
look at states and public schools where you have, like in California, you have almost 40% of Gen Z identifying as LGBT. Right. The idea then being that that if it's purely biological and the only change is how accepting the culture is, right? You now have to make the argument throughout all of history, unless you know, fucking Teflon or fucking some other fucking chemical or the fucking thimerosal in the old vaccines or something, unless you want to make that fucking crazy argument that throughout all of human history, 40% of the human race has been in the closet and they've just been hiding it, which is absurd. Right? Like we know that the AMA is corrupted and we know that the APA is corrupted. We know that academia is pushing a neo-Marxian philosophy that they've readopted for gender ideology. And the idea is that heteronormativity or the patriarchy or capitalism or the idea of race, all of these things are bad and we need to raise gender consciousness. And you can see the levels of grooming that is occurring. And so that is the context in America and our education system and our children, that when you add gender bending and like drag queen story hour and you have drag your kids to pride and you're taking young children to gender bending in the social context of what's occurring, you're damaging your children's mental health so that you can feel better and get some fucking brownie points on social media about how woke you are and how much you support the fucking LGBT current thing.
So I have a question for you.
I was just gonna. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say real quick, like I can acknowledge that there's a social element to being trans, but being trans myself, as a 2-year-old girl, like I told my parents that I was a girl, right? So like I understand, you know, when it's being promoted this heavily, you know, by the media, when it's like, you know, the way that it is, I wouldn't condone that. But like, I see how people use this argument all the time to be like, oh, well, gender is just a social construct, when it's like, I don't know how you explain that I've always known my whole life. I transitioned young before it was this media thing. And also, you said earlier in this debate that like you let your kids dress up. If you had a kid, would you let your kid be trans?
Would I let my kid be trans? I need you to be more specific.
You said if your kid wanted to like, you know,
I
cross-dress
can't let
or, like,
my
do
kid
things
be
that are
what they are, right? I can't not let
Okay.
them not be what they are,
Well,
but I need the question, right?
I'm not forcing. Like, no one told me to be trans. I just am a girl. Like, I just knew that. If your kid randomly said to you, hey, you know, I'm, you know, the other gender, like, would you accept them for who they are? Like, obviously, assuming no one's pushing it on them, because no one pushed it on me.
Right.
I
So,
just wanna
so
know.
the question is really inherent, and it shows how much the left has captured the conversation. You said, would you let your kid be trans? Would you accept them who they are? Of course I would accept my child for who they are. Of course I would let them be whoever it is that they wanted to be. But if my kid was to come up to me, right, and say, hey, Dad, I'm not a girl, I'm a boy, right? I would say, okay, this kid might be playing around. Let's see how that works out. They keep telling me over and over and over again, right? This is what I am. This is what I am. They're really insistent upon it. Okay, now it's time for psychotherapy because this child clearly has gender identity dysphoria in some regard. That doesn't mean they're trans, right? And the overwhelming majority of people that go through puberty accept themselves as a cis individual, right? So that means that they need psychotherapy. We need to dig into this. We need to do multiple sessions to see if they're insistent, to see why they feel this way, to see if that's really deeply ingrained. What we don't need is gender affirming care that gives them a diagnosis and puts them on GRNH androgen therapy on the first fucking session, right? There's a lot to pick apart about your question, but like ultimately I think adults have the right to make any decision, but as a parent, you should be concerned if your child is doing something like that like you don't just affirm that instantaneously, that you dig into why that is occurring and what that means and get to better know and understand the problem and then be able to deal with that as it moves forward in the future.
Okay. I think that that's completely fair. I just think if it does come to a point, I don't think that people should be prescribing hormones the first like appointment. That's ridiculous, right? If it takes a few months, I think it's important to be on blockers if you're young because they're highly reversible and
They're not.
as
The
a
damage is extreme and can do horrible things to children. GRNH antigen therapy is fucking evil. Lupron is killing people.
Okay.
How many people is it killing? Wait, how can you?
Who's it killing?
I'm just curious. Who's it killing?
You've got, we don't have long-term studies, but we have 30-year-olds that because of Lupron have like fucking osteoporosis. We have like increased cancer rates. We have the data that shows that Lupron is not just and that a lot of GRNH antigen therapy and HRT is not just magically reversible. Right. Well, I don't want to couple in HRT, but this idea that you say it's totally reversible is just unscientific. That's pseudoscience lies.
I want to let Rose finish what she's saying, but I know also Pixie was trying to get in, so I want to give her a chance as well.
Okay, I'm just going to say something really, really quick. All I wanted to say is that male puberty is irreversible, and for trans women specifically, if you're a trans woman, you transition when you're 18, your entire rest of your life, you're ruined. Because testosterone, I mean, when that kicks in, I was fortunate that I transitioned at 14, because a lot of people aren't as lucky as me. So I think hormone blockers and estrogen is great. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Pixie, did you want to... Pixie and then Dooby.
Yeah, cool. So, Fabian Guy, you alluded to all of human history compared to now regarding percentages of the population that's LGBT to draw some conclusion about social bias manipulating people into being LGBT. And I was wondering what stats you have, obviously controlling for social acceptance bias over the course of all human history to draw those claims about a supposed percentage of people being LGBT in all of the past done of humanity, and how you can actually justify that claim.
Well, justify what claim? The claim is the one that the others would have to make. I'm saying it's an absurd claim.
No, you're saying there's more LGBT people now, and then saying it's absurd based on some reference to the past that you have not actually substantiated.
No, I'm saying that you would have to, if you claim that it's purely biological, right, which I'm not saying you do. I said if one claims that there isn't a social element to individuals identifying as LGBTQAI plus whatever, right, that if you make that claim and you say that it is only the social acceptance in areas that are as high as 40%, then what you also need to claim is that that has been the case throughout all of human history, barring some biological change. And then I brought up like random crazy things things that one might say that would be a biological change. So I'm not making that claim.
You brought it up, my dude.
Okay,
You've
you're
posited
are you
it as
not?
absurd, and you're not actually appealing to anything.
Okay, are you? I'm
You
not.
have no sense of the data in the past that you're appealing to make some.
I'm not
emotional claim.
appealing to any data in the past. I'm not sure if you understand what's happening right now. What I'm saying is, if you say there's no, I guess I'll repeat it.
Why do you think it's
'cause you
absurd
don't-
in the present? What makes you think that 40% is unreasonable?
What makes me
You have
think
no
that
control group.
40% of all humans in history have been LGBT and been in the closet? Right.
I don't know. I care about science.
Right. And if you want to make that claim, then you can make
You
that
make
claim.
a claim that's unreasonable.
That's what is the claim that I have
Own
made that
your
is unreasonable?
shit.
He is asking
No,
you to.
what is the
because
claim
you
that I
said-
have made? Restate the claim that I have made.
The claim that you've made is that it's absurd that 40% of the human population is has been in the closet.
Mhm.
She's asking you, where are you? Why do you think that? Where are you getting that?
Yeah, like what is your baseline data? In
Okay,
order to be able
right.
to say that
Okay,
that's a
I see what you're
deviation?
saying. So what you're saying is one would need to claim that and prove that, and now you want me to prove the opposite of that claim. And so the opposite of that claim is that I think that it is ridiculous to assume that 40% of everyone throughout all of human history has been LGBT. Well, I would say that the idea then would be that the individuals in power throughout society would had to have constructed religions and rules and laws that are against homosexuality the way that they have done, despite 40% of those people being of that idea, right? So 40% of people would have had to have naturally and easily been against all of the specific strong gender roles that we've had, the religious laws that have occurred that have been anti-LGBT, all of these things. And I think that it would be remarkable for them to have that much power throughout most societies and throughout most empires and throughout most religions without there being significant pushback. We'll say that from an anthropological perspective.
Problem with
I
that?
would
Yeah,
say
I think
really
that-
quickly,
Well,
really
where's the
quickly, thank you,
40% coming
Beckett.
from?
Because he had cited it that 40% of
Yeah, but
children
it
in
doesn't exist. It's not a real statistic. That's the problem I'm having.
Yeah, it is.
I
It
wanna-
is
I
actually.
wanna
Actually,
call-
for parents,
looking into it from the Gallup study,
for
and it's like
parents,
20%. It's 20% in Gen Z identifying, and those are like young people. So 40% is
specifically
just a
talking
made-up-
about California.
When you're in startups, that's just...
Yeah, so
Okay.
he was talking about some statistic in California. I did want to say thank you, Beckett, for the 10 subs, 10 memberships rather. And yeah, so it was regarding like a California study where like 40% of Gen Zers in California identify as LGBTQ or something like that.
So there's a problem with using that statistic, especially the way that you're using it, is because when you say LGBT, you're including a whole lot of things in there. That includes bisexual people, pansexual, that includes people who are questioning or consider themselves to be off the,
Absolutely. I'm not saying
outliers.
specifically gay and lesbian, right? Or trans.
So and we're not talking specifically like gender nonconformity either, right? Because it includes so many things in LGBT when you say that. So when people identify as LGBT, it's not unreasonable to think that a lot of people identify as LGBT, but don't necessarily identify as trans or gender nonconforming or gay or lesbian or any of those things.
I would also
right?
like to go into lots of the other factors omitted to consider
Mhm.
here.
Yeah. So and
It doesn't weaken my position. What you're stating doesn't weaken my position at all.
Well, it does, because if you take a look, okay, so if we think about this from on a longer timeline, it's very possible that throughout the centuries that there have been many people who have found attraction to someone of the same sex or of both sexes, right? Or have felt themselves to be not fitting their gender role, right, etc. So all these things could have been very possible for a large portion of the population, but because it was something that didn't really have a culture around acknowledging it and allowing for it, and oftentimes there was more a culture of shunning it and suppressing it, then it's not unreasonable to consider that in a modern industrialized age where people are more socially progressive and more accepting of diversity and uniqueness, that more people would feel comfortable to come out about those things, and therefore you would see those numbers manifest.
Right. So you would have to, again, you would have to make the claim, and that is okay if you make the claim. You would have to make the claim that throughout human history, that there have been an incredibly large, sizable minority of people, right? Getting close to 40%, possibly even higher, that were non-binary, questioning, bisexual, transgender, gay, lesbian, or queer. Obviously, they wouldn't be queer because that's a modern invention of a category, but in some regard, questioning or fitting outside of the gender binary system, or sexually not fully attracted to the same species, and that those in power would have needed to construct this very non-progressive culture that you're saying, despite nearly every other person in their society not fitting in that idea. Right? So how is it that every society that we've known and every empire creates that? You now have to set up this weird power dynamic and mythos of heteronormativity as a means of saying that every other person has been oppressed and suppressed throughout all of human history. It's absurd.
Greece was pretty gay. It wasn't.
Hold on, but it goes even further than that, though. but it goes even further, because if they've actually done studies, right, as to whether the children raised by LGBT parents end up being LGBT themselves, right, and they found that they're way out of proportion with the general population. Yes, especially if you have a daughter raised by two lesbian parents, she's in her from 33 to 50%, 57%. She has a 33% to 57% chance of adopting an LGBT identity. That is massively out of the range of the general population.
Right? And do you think that
everything? Wait 1 second,
oh,
please. And everything we know about gender identity, sexuality, gender expression, etc., everything we know about this tells us that there is like a cultural nurture factor here. It's not just totally biological, right? So I don't know why we wouldn't think that children raised in an environment like
Nobody's saying it's totally biological.
Well, then what are you guys saying then? While we're arguing is that, hey, if you expose children to this,
it could just be our understanding of like sex and gender is evolving over time, right? And the fluidity of these two things are changing over time as well, and we're realizing.
Be clear. So the claim that Scott and I are making is that if you expose children to this kind of stuff,
whenever you're all ready for answers, I have them.
All right, let's
There's literally no fluidity in sex, for the record.
I just want to let Dooby finish his. Hurry the fuck up, Dooby. Okay, and then
and Pixie's been waiting for a while.
Then Pixie. Then who else wants in? Somebody raise your hand. Okay, Papa got after Pixie. Okay, all right. Dooby, finish your point.
So the point that I'm making, I think the point that Scott is making, is that there is an element of social conditioning here, right? So like cultural impact on the way that you express your gender identity or sexuality, where you end up on the spectrum, right? So given that that's the case, if you're exposing children to this sort of thing, whether it's the drag queen thing or whatever, right? You're more likely to get these children identifying in that way. Right. So what I thought you guys were arguing is that that's not true, and we shouldn't think this. And actually, these people would have been gay or lesbian or trans or whatever the fuck all along. So we're just being like reactionaries or some shit. But now you guys are saying, hey, it is true that there's a social impact. So what's the contention with what we're saying?
Okay, Pixie.
All right. So in this historical thing, people are pointing out like just a difference in acceptance over time. That's not actually true. Here are some other factors to consider. One, the historiography and historical records and categorization of them. There's huge biases in historians depicting or altering works to read and be interpreted as straight in the modern day. Also, there are instances like in Nazi Germany, they burned a bunch of records on the study of LGBT people, right? So part of our understanding of the past is based on destroyed data sets. Second, there's different categorization systems and cultures. So in ancient, was it Greece or Rome? They had a military system where you'd have the older, like, grizzled soldier, like the Chad, and then you have, like, the little Twinkie femboy who comes in as, like, the low level, and they would be partnered up to, like, fight in battle and also kind of be boyfriends. And then eventually you'd grow up and you'd be the Chad soldier, and then you go home and you marry a wife. And so that's something in the modern day we would probably categorize as gay. In that culture, it was not the case. So there's a change in just, that doesn't follow straight along the same lines we have today. You can read A History of Sexuality, Part 1 by Foucault to learn more about that. And also there's shifting gender roles. So someone who would be born today and might like certain
someone unironically bringing up Foucault as a means of arguing that the history is that we've always been gay all along.
Described by people, right? So if you look in like the past, men would dress with kind of long wigs and heels and stuff like that. And today, if you did that same thing as a man, you would be potentially categorized differently or explore yourself in different ways and categorize yourself differently. Yeah, so that's all that.
Makeup, etc.
Can I just say also, it's really.
What do you mean by that? Like, I'm trying to understand what you mean by like what the relevance of the gender expression changing over history. I don't understand the relevance there. I'm just curious.
Sure. So if you behave the same way today and in the past, how you would describe yourself as like normal, like, you know, in this like cishet normative kind of way versus like calling yourself LGBT would change because like the goalpost move and like the box moves around you. So like if you wore the same kind of clothes, like if a man today dressed like Isaac Newton did, or like an old, you know, European royal, they would be seen as like a cross-dresser. So it's just, if you know you like doing certain things,
right? But I mean, I don't understand. But I'm trying to connect the dots. Like, why is that point relevant?
Because you would not have a clear record of that, and you would not count that as LGBT representation. You just consider that normal. Yeah. If you judge everyone for all time by current standards,
so you're trying to say is that the historians don't like. So what you're trying. So I'm trying to connect this, right? So what you're saying is because gender expression has changed, the assumption is that the historian is unaware of the different forms of gender expression and therefore wouldn't be able to accurately understand or depict or capture the percentile of individuals that might be LGBT because they would not understand the historical context of the gender expression being different?
They would understand it, and the historical context might treat it differently. The point is, if you were to judge the past by modern standards, we might see similar trends in behavior as we would categorize them today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't deny that. I just don't understand how that's relevant.
Because the numbers are padded today, right? So you're saying LGBT and it includes all these things under it, right? So when you say 40% of Californian Gen Zers identify as LGBT, well, there's a subset of that under that category that normally you would not include in those numbers if you took into account the historical context of like people who dressed differently that we would consider today to be trans or trans femme or gender bending, etc. They wouldn't have been at certain points of time in our culture in the past, right? So that's what she's trying to say, is that the number that you're giving today that we're identifying as LGBT is a very broad number encompassing a lot of different things that we wouldn't normally have considered to be oddball and thus in LGBT, right? Because a lot of what LGBT is sort of like the outliers for what was heteronormative culture today, not necessarily 300 years ago, right?
Okay, I want to give it to Papa Gut.
All right. Yeah. All right, listen. So we've pretty much, we're talking about whether there's a social factor to identifying as LGBTQ. We already kind of know that's true. There's probably a lot of kids exploring their gender. There's people that are probably feeling more comfortable to actually identify the way they want to. And there's also probably some people that are just like trans trending. I think everybody in high school does weird shit where they over-identify with something. But like it's kind of really off topic because we're trying to talk about like, the dangerous aspect of drag. So like, what's wrong with it? Who cares? If we can get back on track, like, why does it matter? Why do you think going to a drag show for a kid? And I'm not saying we should have kids only drag shows, but why is this going to cause society to crumble and collapse? Because the argument, kid sees a gay person dancing, and like you said before, you compared it to clowns, so you don't even think it's that serious anyway.
I didn't for sure, but I get what you're saying. So the reason that this is devolving into a conversation about what constitutes the social element towards individuals identifying in a certain way is that we have a social context now where if one identifies, especially those that have, previous trauma, those that are being, groomed online in Discord servers, those that are being groomed by the public school system, and then of course
I keep using the word grooming. Like, why does that word mean nothing to you? Like, it's weird.
No, it means a lot to me. I'm not using it casually.
Do you mean conditioning?
No, I mean taking children, right? I mean,
Okay.
taking children that are unable to understand their identity fully, unable to consent, then triangulating them from parents, keeping secrets from parents, love bombing them and giving them special attention. No, that's what I'm talking about in the public education.
We're talking about it, but
Right,
that's so
I'm-
irrelevant.
but
We're
no,
talking about
it's
a drag
not
show
so irrelevant.
Where parents took their kids willingly.
It's
So like
not
the public
so
school
irrelevant.
system, the public school system aspect of this is so irrelevant to the conversation that we're talking about right now.
No,
it seems like you're
because it's
hijacking
the
the conversation that you can talk about an issue that you have a problem with, which is totally fine.
No,
completely
it's
irrelevant to specifically
No, you
whether we
don't
should allow.
get to- you don't get to devoid it of context.
You've talked like the whole time. Let me get a point out. This isn't relevant specifically to the conversation whether we should allow kids a drag or not. You're talking about the public school system withholding information from parents. Different conversation. Not the time for it. We're so off of topic.
No.
Let's talk about
specifically.
Let's specifically talk about the issue of parents, in this case, bringing their kids to a drag show, not about the public school system. Like, that's what we're here to talk
False.
about. So let's
False.
isolate it to the
No.
conversation.
I disagree.
What are you talking about?
I
It's true. That's the
disagree.
whole conversation.
No,
You can
I
disagree,
disagree.
but you're wrong objectively.
No, you're wrong because you're trying to devoid it from the context. You're trying to
Not.
devoid it from the social situation that we have. If you want to talk about the dangers of drag, then you first need to establish that there is some social element. Everyone here agrees that there is
We've
some
already acknowledged
social
that, but
element.
that has nothing
Right,
to
so
do with
that's
teachers
point
in
one.
schools.
Right, we agree that there is a social element. We also, what I'm now attempting to describe is that there is lots of issues with our children currently and the confusion around gender, and that this is an additional element that can exacerbate problems that are connected with other things. I'm not going to do a fucking univariate analysis and only look at drag and only look at the exact effects
But
that
that's
that
what the
drag has,
conversation is.
completely isolated from the world that the fucking children live in. It's an absurd
talking
thing to
about
say.
a conversation about parents bringing their kids to drag. This is if you want to talk about it after, we should satisfy this conversation first.
No. You do not get to devoid the entire
You don't
world
get
that
to
they live
hijack
in.
conversation just so for some like clips on YouTube, man. Like, why don't we just talk about the real
but
conversation?
if that was your- if that was your issue-
You just keep using the word grooming over and over again. Like, it's
If
just
your
like it's
issue was the
fucking
fact that
insane.
he,
All right, well,
he's
if you're
talking
not
about the
willing
school
to have an
system
argument, you're not
whatsoever,
willing.
why didn't you talk about that? You asked him why he kept using the word grooming, then he explained why he's using the word grooming.
Well, he means the word conditioning. He's just trying to morally load it.
No,
I think-
I'm
I
not.
think he means grooming.
I mean
Yeah.
fucking
I do wanna
grooming.
say- I'm sorry, guys, but money speaks to me. Thank you, Couchman, for the $10 super chat with the octopus emoji. I very much appreciate it. Remember, chat, you can super chat me, and maybe, if it's appropriate, I will read your dumb fucking super chat. Secondly, I will let Papa Gut finish what he's saying. I want to give then the some speaking time to Critical Canadian too as well, since he's been waiting patiently.
I want to hear from Nick also. I have a feeling Nick has got some powerful insight here.
I absolutely don't. I'm texting Stardust apologizing.
No, he has a
I'll
spicy
chime in
take.
eventually, I promise.
He has a spicy take, but let's go with Papa Gut first.
There's not much else to say. I mean, I just think we should try to keep it to the conversation about kids drag and mostly parents willingly taking their kids to drag rather than go off onto this whole steamboat. Because we didn't even set we started off talking about how it was sexualized. Nobody's been able to show us how inherently drag is sexualized, other than this kind of like weird perspective of trying to compound sexualization with gender conversation, which those aren't the same thing. When in society we look at sexualized things as things relating to like having sex. So we just kind of like throwing the definitions. Like, we're throwing words out here that don't align with the definition of the word, like grooming and sexualization, and we haven't even gone that far. But we're really good at talk. I don't know. We're going off the fucking rails.
Yeah,
So.
we are going off the rails. I do agree. Critical Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with Papa Gut more. I think when we talk about sexualization, we kind of get lost in this. I think when we talk about sexualization, we should realize that we're talking about something being the sexual desire or the sexual object that somebody is lusting after. And when you're kind of missing that component, while it might be, it might be scantily, they might be dancing. We can look to other areas of society where we see this, where we don't put the same sexual lens on it. I do kind of have a question for Fabian Liberty. If you had let's say a kid was questioning their gender identity, do you think they could use drag to kind of suss out whether or not they're actually trans? Like if they maybe they think they're a trans girl, trans woman, and they, do it like a drag queen type thing. Do you think that could help them kind of like make that decision and understand their gender?
I think that if you want to engage in drama therapy, that you shouldn't just encourage parents that aren't licensed to engage in that level of therapy to do so. If your therapist believes that drama therapy is a good way to suss that out, right? Then and to engage with what it feels like to be in that role and do so under the care of someone that is licensed and specialized in gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, yeah, sure. I think drama therapy could be effective.
What do you think could go wrong? What do you think could go wrong there?
Right. So, I mean, you're talking about someone that is not cognitively fully developed, doesn't have, especially when talking about like narrative therapy and an understanding of like identity, they don't have a strong sense of identity yet. They're children. Right. So when you start giving them performances to play, right, it can confuse them further. But if it's done under the care of someone that kind of knows what they're doing, knows the circumstances that the child is doing, that they're in, and is engaged in therapy, yeah, I think drama therapy might be an effective way, but I would leave that up to, a licensed psychologist, master's in social work, counselor, etc., to be engaging in that kind of stuff, and not just like parents experimenting with their kids playing under genders.
Do you think parents should be pushing what they think like masculinity or femininity should be, or it should be more like a societal thing that we look to like allow kids to explore their own kind of like identities?
I would think it's probably a mixture of both, right? I mean, I think children need to be socialized into their social environment, but I also think that parents are the default guardians of children and should be imparting their values and wisdom on their children.
So a parent can like allow like push like the masculinity or femininity, but they can't allow their child to like explore it. They can push one aspect of gender but not another.
No, I didn't make that claim.
Well, that's what you're saying. You're saying that parents aren't allowed to like drama play with their kids to allow them to explore their gender.
I never said anything about whether or not they're allowed to do anything, right?
Well, you said they shouldn't be, right? That therapists should be doing it, parents shouldn't.
Yeah, it would be a bad idea to engage in drama therapy when you don't know what you're doing with your child that is identifying with gender identity disorder. Like this is like if your child has gender identity dysphoria, gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder, and they're coming to you with that, you should start seeking out experts. You shouldn't just like play willy-nilly.
But let's say like your kid comes to you, I want to try a dress on because I want to see if it's something I enjoy. Is that something that a parent should be able to do, or should they go to an expert? Well, no, that is because that's what we're talking about.
No,
right?
That's a totally different context, right? If your kid just says, I want to try a dress, that's up to the parent to decide whether or not they want the kid to wear a dress. I don't know. Like, I don't see anything wrong with a kid wanting to play. Like, if my son wants to play dress up with my daughter and they both play princess, like, fuck it, play princess, dude, have at it. But when someone comes to you and says, I think I'm a girl over and over again, or I think I'm a boy over and over again, it's time to involve a professional.
What does that have to do with
let's say they come to you and they go, I feel like a girl, I want to try on a dress. Should a parent go to an expert first, or should the parent allow them to wear that dress?
In what context? Are they saying it over and over and over again?
Yeah, they say
or they just say it once.
They say, Dad, I want to try a dress.
I'm so sorry, but I think we are really getting off topic here because we're trying to
it's not because it's it's the like if you look at drag as like the cosplay of like gender and the flamboyantness of it, right? As we move through the ages, right? Like what the Greeks did for like femininity isn't going to be the same that like drag kings do now, right? It's going to be very different. What drag queens do now is not going to be the same that they did in Greek times, right? It's going to look very different. So what I'm asking is like, if you have a child that comes to you and says, I'm a girl, I think I'm a girl, I think I'm a girl, I want to try on a dress, would you allow them to basically wear that dress to see if they fit like that kind of gender standard that we have in society today?
There's a difference between drag and cross-dressing, right? I thought.
Yeah, but they're saying that they're saying it's always bad because it could confuse a child. I'm asking if we could use it in a positive way to allow children to like see if they're actually comfortable with their gender identity, or like
I don't know how many times
they might have.
I don't know how many times we can go back and forth on this before I just give you the same answer, which is that like if someone has gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria and is presenting that way, you shouldn't just play around with them. You should seek help, because this, even regardless of whether or not they grow up to be a trans person or whether or not they grow up comfortable in their own body, which is the majority, right? No matter what, you're looking at a situation that is likely going to lead towards a lot of difficulties in the future. And you should do the best to take care of your children and protect your children and to guide them through those difficulties. And you shouldn't just be playing willy-nilly with gender without getting specific help. Like, I don't understand.
Okay, can I ask one more question for the whole panel? Is nudist colonies inherently sexual? And then everybody can chew off.
Who's the fucking moderator here? Critical Canadian? No, I'm just kidding. You can ask the question, but know your.
Sorry, I'm
fucking
mansplaining
place.
all over the place.
Know your fucking place.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of Critical Canadian being the moderator here. I don't think you're doing a very good job, Stardust.
Wow.
Why are you summoning the screaming?
I'm
You're summoning
sorry.
the screaming.
I'm sorry. Well, just 1 second. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Just a second. All right. So let's continue with what we were saying. Just kidding.
Damn.
Transphobia in action right there.
All right. It was like a Dylan Burns moment. I just watched Xanderhall get voted off hippy dippy right live. The fuck?
Unbelievable.
I'll answer the question, okay? I think, I mean, it
Sure did
depends on.
take her a long time to do that, though. It's like, gotta look for the mod controls, look for the mod controls.
Well, look, I do most of my moderating yelling. Yes, continue what you were saying, Papa
You asked a question.
Sonia fucking interrupted you.
You asked if is nudist colonies are inherently sexual? Yeah, probably not. I think a lot of that is like a societal standard for the most part. Like if I saw a nudist colony, I'd probably think it's sexual. I'd start masturbating right on the spot. But
Jesus Christ, dude.
if I lived in a nudist colony, I probably wouldn't. You know what I mean? So it's very much like a social.
Who's gonna stop him?
Nobody can stop me. You wouldn't even be able to see it. You wouldn't even be able to see me masturbating because you wouldn't be able to see it. It's so small.
Well, not the people of the nudist colony. They're most likely vegans, right? They're going to be too weak to stop Papa Gut.
Maybe.
Well, look, I don't think the human body is inherently like sexual per se. I think it's like when you do sexual things with it, right? So you can look at like sexual organs from like a very clinical way and like not. I don't know. I feel like there's definitely a difference there, but yeah, Rose, you haven't spoken in a while. Did you want to say something?
Actually did. This is going to be a little long, but I'll try to make it short. Okay. So first of all,
That's what she said.
Okay, anyway, so Papa Gut was mentioning how we were off topic. I want to address all those things. I wrote this whole thing. So just because parents brought them, that doesn't make it okay. Parents make bad decisions all the time. That shouldn't be allowed. You know, if a parent makes their child do like a beauty pageant, that's probably not good. I think drag is super sexual. I think like the organizer specifically made an event for kids, and the fact that they put sexual elements. I mean, you have this drag queen like taking the dollar from this literal child. Like, I think that's particularly despicable. And also, when you're doing drag, you're doing an over-exaggerated version of a sex that you don't even identify as. And when you say, what about Dua Lipa? Well, the difference between Dua Lipa is that she's not an exaggeration of femininity. She's being herself. I think there's a big difference between fake boobs and a woman wearing a low-cut shirt. And I think it's dishonest to say they're the same thing.
Well, wait, a lot of.
Wait, which one's sexier though?
That was pretty short, actually. That was pretty short.
Which one is sexier though? I'm a little confused.
A lot of women have fake boobs too, though. Like cis women.
Well, no, but I think she means like actually like just wearing fake boobs like under your shirt.
Why does it make it more sexual though to have fake boobs versus having real boobs? What makes that more sexual?
The problem isn't the sexual thing, I think. And Rose, you
sounded
can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think what you're pointing to is the fact that drag, part of the performative aspect, is highlighting stereotypical parts of feminine expression, right?
It's kind of a caricature.
Are you saying it's sexist?
It's like a caricature. Yeah, well, in some ways, yeah. It's a bunch of.
We should teach.
I think in any other context,
sexual.
it's a bunch of guys, typically a bunch of like males, not trans people, just males, gay males, who are, making like a caricature of like women, right? Like that's. I think in any other context, it'd be considered.
It's parody. It's like the most flattering form, you know. That's what it is, a parody.
I don't think so.
In a lot of ways, drag is similar to
blackface flattering.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but that's not what it is.
Topic. That is an interesting topic. So before we go forward, Nick brought up something very interesting. I want to say that for $2, Rob Dolan gave me $2 to say Papa took Fabio to the library. I don't know what that means, but thank you for the $2. Please give me more money. Thirdly, okay. Wait, not thirdly. Secondly, okay. Back to the topic. Nick just made a very interesting point. Is drag at all similar to blackface and minstrel shows?
Yeah, well, historically it is. Yes. Like you literally can't deny that because historically minstrel shows were a part of drag. But
I think the question would really boil down to what woman like truly is there any? There's no movement from any woman being like this is horribly offensive to us as women.
You have one here.
Well, yeah, so there's no movement, like general, like there's no movement of women. Right?
Rose,
like there's a
Rose,
movement.
You gotta get up and move.
We don't have a voice in these spaces.
Women don't have voices in the LGBTQ space. Gay guys and women are like best friends all the time. We're talking about.
No, God, straight
Well, if
women.
we're talking on the
God,
online LGBTQ sphere, there is like definitely an issue with like, you know.
Stardust, what is your opinion? Do you feel mocked by drag performers?
I don't feel mocked by drag because but I also think that a lot of like cis women engage in like hyper exaggerations of feminine traits as well. But I do sometimes see where people are coming from when they talk about how you'll see like trans women pass like better than cis women do a lot of the time and things like that. So I do kind of see where people are coming from with that, but I don't really know if that's really related to like the drag thing, you know. So
And I think that
I'm kind of on the fence.
I think that
for
saying
it.
that there's like no movement or there's no like women against this, like so part of what TERFs are is this, right? They're not. It's not specifically against.
Well,
trans
I
people.
just want to one thing before we. I just want to say there's a difference between being against it and calling it some kind of like blackface. Being against.
Well, that's
drag
what
is
I'm getting
different. But there's different between calling it some form of like blackface, which nobody's doing that.
Yeah, okay.
It's like blackface, but
I
it's
don't-
good
wait, one
because
second.
women are inferior.
That's great.
Thanks.
So yeah. So this is
Hey,
part of
what
what
do you have
this, what
reasons
this is
for
part of what TERFs are like about, right?
No.
They're
It's just, I
feminist
don't
groups.
stream on Sunday nights.
Men are.
I just
are,
chose
not only
to show up to
invading
Chaos
female
Cast, and I
spaces,
figured, fuck it,
because
I'll
they
go
don't
live on
consider trans
YouTube.
women to
I'm not
be-
banned
to be
from
like
Twitch,
women.
boys.
But also that these men in their trans expression are making a mockery of women.
Like, we'll be back on Twitch tomorrow.
Reinforcing stereotypes about what a woman should be and what a woman should look like. Right. So this is part of what TERFs are. Right. So to say that there's nothing like nobody against against drag queens, I think it's kind of silly.
Do you think if the stereotypes of women in society would change, the way that drag is expressed would change?
Sure.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So do you think that maybe they're actually just reflecting the stereotypes, and then maybe that just makes us a little uncomfortable?
Yeah, but that's what blackface does, right? Like typically.
I mean, drag doesn't make
that's what minstrel shows.
I fucking love drag
Blackface
shows.
generally doesn't that. Wasn't it usually
Blackface
used
is
as like a
always
mockery?
mocking. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, hold on.
it depends. There
minstrel
were
shows were
serious,
about like mockery. Like, what do you?
there were
Mockery,
serious
but it's-
actors who felt that they were doing an actual art form. So it wasn't.
It is mockery. It is
It is
mockery, but
mockery.
it is also a reflection of very of stereotypes that they saw. Basically,
Mhm.
And that's what
Yeah.
blackface and these
And
minstrel shows were. It
there were
was a
actors-
reflection of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were actors that were high paid for their particular portrayals of black people in movies
Yeah.
and cinema. So, and they thought that they were a part of an art form, right? They thought that they were doing, sort of like doing a graceful job of it, right?
Mhm.
So, of course, from the outside, as a member of the community that is being caricatured, they didn't all feel that way. So,
Yeah, I mean, blackface is bad.
so this could be the case. I don't really know what the numbers are currently like. I don't know. There may be a cultural shift over time where eventually a lot of women and feminine people will be like, I don't really feel comfortable with drag because it's kind of mocking us. It's kind of playing up these stereotypes that we're tired of being tied to and tired of being held down by.
I'm not
Like,
on
that
Twitch
could be
right
the case.
now.
I don't know.
I'm just
what
streaming on YouTube.
How people currently feel, really, because I don't think we really do surveys of this stuff.
I would assume that would extend to like,
Like, I'll be
drag
back
kings
tomorrow.
as well, where you have like women stereotypically portraying men. I assume that would be like all around all forms of drag.
I'm sure, yeah,
like
it's
the way that-
possible. I think that the exaggeration that like goes into being drag queens tends to be much more exaggeration.
Yeah, I'm a
I
little
like the way,
confused here.
that one SNL actor, she portrayed Justin Bieber doing like a commercial kind of thing, a mock commercial, and she's very much like playing up the stereotypes of Justin Bieber, but she did such a good job with it. It was almost convincing in a way. So I really appreciate that kind of stuff when I can see like male impersonation being done so well, even though it's sort of a caricature encompassing all these stereotypes of the person that they're caricaturing.
It looked like Nick was gonna say something.
Yes.
I wanted.
So,
yeah.
All right. So a lot of the drag queen stuff that I've seen is related to like recording artists or something. Apparently, with this last event, or like dressing up as like people from
Yeah,
history and stuff.
that's historically how like drag usually manifests itself. It's mostly people or men dressing up like famous women that usually do music, and that's why it's become more sexualized, because music in it of itself has become more sexualized.
So yeah, but like that's considered powerful, even though it's like a caricature of that woman. So like, so why is like a Dua Lipa drag thing like powerful, but if I were to do drag as like Nicki Minaj, I'm racist?
Do it, Nick.
Do it. Say it.
Do it.
Say it.
don't
Say
know
it.
if
Say the
anybody-
word, Nick.
I don't know if anybody's explored what do you call it, race bending. I really just don't know. I don't think I've seen any drag person. I think that people just generally think it's insensitive because of the history, especially in America with black people.
There was, I mean, like
The
I
intention
haven't
is
seen
to
it in the modern day,
celebrate Nicki
but
Minaj.
but
you know?
but drag was part of minstrel shows back in the day, right?
Oh.
So I mean, like it's
Yeah.
so like in the late 1800s and early 1900s, especially. Like there were minstrel shows that were drag shows both, right? So the two have been combined. I don't know that I've seen anybody do that now, because I feel like that would be like front page news for Fox News. Like
Yeah. And the reason this doesn't have is probably because like women, especially white women, are below black people on the oppression ladder, right? According to these people.
I want to hear Rose speak.
Based.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you for letting me have the floor. So first of all, I think that me genuinely identifying myself isn't mocking anyone. That's the reason why drag bothers me so much, is because that's, people see like, I think drag is mocking me. But anyway, when it comes to blackface, I think there's this worrying trend that's occurred where people will, this isn't super common, I'll admit, but I saw this happen in 2020 with George Floyd. People were literally, there was a trend on TikTok, people were painting their face black with like the Black Lives Matter power fist, and like doing it for Black Lives Matter. And when I see that, that's how I view drag personally. I view it as mocking me in that same way. I feel like drag is if blackface was allowed to exist and pretend to be this woke thing when it's really this offensive thing. That's all I have to say.
Well, I
Yeah,
think
and
people
I'm
on the
kind
internet.
of-
Oh,
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
empathetic.
fucking
I'm-
horseshoe
I'm-
theory. Let's go.
I'm empathetic to that position as well. As a matter of fact, Rose was the one who kind of opened me to that concept on Twitter, actually, and I hadn't really thought of it in that from that perspective before. Like, I never liked drag myself. I always felt that it was a bit of a caricature, and it seemed to really play up stereotypes that normally we would consider to be stereotypes that kind of hold us back, right? And hold women back in general. And so I never really liked it because of that. But then after having a conversation with Rose on Twitter, she opened me to the idea of like how blackface was seen similarly to be like this, it is taking certain stereotypes and propping them up and doing it as an art form, as a performance art, right? And at some point we decided, okay, well, that's not appropriate. And how come? And so it got me thinking, asking that question, like, why haven't we gotten to the point of saying this isn't appropriate for drag? I'm not necessarily completely against drag, right? But I'm very empathetic to that position. And I know me personally, I never liked it because I felt that it does that very thing.
I have something to kind of expand on that. I think it's really annoying because, like, through the 20th century, mainly in the 19th century, LGBT spaces, at least in America, as far as I know, the public image of them was relegated to like a fetish by cis gay men, and so that's why the kind of LGBT community got routed through little bars and BDSM club type things and a whole other community and all that, which was great to have as a safe haven. But it's really annoying because drag was absolutely a part of that. The charitable interpretation is that for a lot of gay men, I'm sure growing up and being called feminine or less of a man led to more of a willingness and almost empowering rejection of that by like, see, I can dress up as feminine as I want and I still feel like a man. But the annoying downside of that is that it's rooted in a lot of misogyny, a lot of stereotyping, and a lot of cis gay men spaces can absolutely be pretty misogynistic, sort of infamous in like lesbian communities. It's kind of annoying. And it seems that it's really frustrating these days when I think the primary issue that like stuff like Pride needs to focus on is like trans youth, especially trying to just be like, look, this is a thing, to sort out with social acceptance and some medical help where it's needed. And it's really annoying to have to constantly still all the LGBT community fight against this spotlight on such a niche subcultural thing from gaming culture that's often sexualized and often misogynistic, and I hate that we all have to have an opinion on this and make this a thing, because it does kind of suck and it does take over conversations, and it's not representative of the LGBT community at all. Certainly not me.
Yeah, that was another area where you and I both agreed and like both found common ground on is it sort of dominates the conversation. Like the LGBT community is more than just what it was originally kind of shoehorned into by our heteronormative society, which, as Pixie stated, was about like being homosexual meant it was sort of like a kink or a fetish, right? And so you do have there's a point where any kind of social progression needs to sort of break its original boundaries or its original confines. Its original confines are often going to be when it's a persecuted group, it's going to be sort of like leaning into the persecution and playing it up as like, yeah, you can't crush me with your persecution. You can't destroy me with your persecution. And so the Pride movement was about being loud and proud about the things that they were being shunned for, and the things they were being labeled as, and the things that they were being pigeonholed as. But at some point, you get to a point where you get broader acceptance, and you have to start including and lifting up the diversity within your group, and showing that you're more than just those things that you were pigeonholed as originally 50 years ago, right? And that's where I think, like, I know Pixie and I both kind of were breaking bread on that. We're both agreeing with that.
Yeah,
on
but
Twitter.
wouldn't that be easier to do if you didn't have cis white men like the ones on this panel, aside from Scott, because he's half black, defending defending the bad actors, right? Defending these kind of people who are doing this pretty like blatantly fucked up shit in front of children, who are inviting children to a space and then making that space sexual in some way, right? Wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be easier, right, if these cis white allies weren't twisting themselves into pretzels to defend this shit?
Yes, absolutely. I'm tired of acting like to defend that is to defend myself.
Do you think they should apologize to you?
Sure.
What am I apologizing for? I'm sorry.
Mr. Gutt and Mr. Canadian, go for it.
What were we talking about? What was I apologizing for?
Yeah, what am I apologizing for? Sorry.
not you, Scott.
No, it's about the gay men who are performing.
No, not the gay men.
Drag queens, right?
The cis white allies who defend this kind of bullshit and make the rest of the community look really bad.
What am I
Because
defending?
They want the virtue signal.
Where's the white coming from?
What's a virtue signal? I look like the most conservative redneck in the fucking world.
Mr. Gutt and Critical Canadian, I'm calling them virtue signalers, right?
Wait,
Twisting themselves into pretzels.
What virtue did
Oh,
I
I see
signal?
what you're saying. They don't.
Ironically, I
Tolerance.
think you signaled your lack of virtue, but I think you were intending to signal like your tolerance virtue.
You threw me
By
asking
dumbass questions like, what's sexual about this thing?
Shut up and let Dooby finish. Sorry, Dooby, continue.
Okay, so what led up to this
I'm
was
just for muting people. I swear to God.
was a very friendly conversation that Mr. Canadian and I had on Twitter, right? Where he was asking really dumb questions, right? Like he did a bit in this panel. Like, what's sexual about this? You know, well, if they were wearing something else, it would be sexual. What's sexual about children giving dollar bills to people dancing? It's giving a dollar bill sexual. This kind of really stupid nonsense, right? Where we try to separate what's going on from all the context surrounding it, right? To try to find some way to make this okay. Just accept that it's fucked up. Say that it's fucked up. Say the parents they shouldn't have taken their fucking kids there. This bar.
I think everybody said that already.
No, he didn't. Right, and I think you earlier were looking for ways to give this a pass.
No, I
That's
wasn't.
what I got
I
from
literally said, I think even like my opening statement where I made a really funny joke and none of you laughed, which is by the way very offensive.
You're not funny.
Well, you know what? That's subjective. Okay?
Yo,
It's just-
hold on.
hold on.
I be lurking on Papa Gut,
Hold
right?
on.
He's funny.
What are you doing? Talking over me? I'm the moderator here. This is bullshit.
But the drag thing taught me that misogyny is fine. So shut up.
Yeah, no, that's what I've learned. That's what I've learned. Okay,
Right.
we're teaching children misogyny, and it's
Good.
totally okay.
We really need Stardust at those drag shows to moderate the drag shows to keep the kids safe.
Can we get the leaf to apologize, please?
All right, I want to know what I'm apologizing for because we started off and what I said is I wouldn't.
He wants
I
me
wouldn't.
to apologize.
Oh, okay. Me
To
too.
the leaf.
You too. But
What am I-
first the leaf. I'll get to you in a second.
Yeah, apparently he wants me to apologize for asking questions.
Apologize.
Hang on. I let you
Apologize
speak.
for making
okay?
the
I let you
LGBT
speak.
community
I
look
let you
bad.
speak. Okay, let me
Signal
speak.
your virtue.
Okay, I didn't realize I have to like fight this hard to even get one sentence out before you just like jump down my throat, right? When I ask you what's sexual about it, right? I'm trying to understand your perspective about what makes this sexual. Because when I asked is a nudist colony, hey, can I fucking finish? When I asked, is a nudist colony sexual, right? And we realize that there are people within that community that are going to view sexuality and sex very different from probably the general population. I want to know what your definition and your understanding
I'm sorry, that's
of
not sensible.
sexualizing something is.
That's insane. Are you neurodivergent? Or do you,
Maybe I am. So what? What if I want to ask you?
Because
your
these are the two
understanding
options
so
I
can
have.
actually
Right?
understand.
So either you're socially impaired and you probably shouldn't
Maybe.
be
Yeah,
having this
for sure.
conversation in the first place because you just lack the tools to have it.
Yeah,
or
totally.
or you're twisting yourself into pretzels, pretending you don't know what's sexual about this and the context that we're speaking about it in.
Or maybe I'm trying to
signal
gauge
virtue.
your understanding of what actually makes something
I think
sexual.
it's pretty
because
clear.
I think it's a little
I think
too.
it's pretty
I think
clear
you're a
what
little
makes
too
this
jumping the gun when it
I don't
comes
think
to
I'm jumping
over
the gun by calling this a
sexualizing
sexual
like
space.
things that look like women.
Okay,
right?
can you
women's clothing?
Do you think this is
how
not
they
okay,
dress?
women's clothing? Okay,
Look,
you're
if you
doing
think
thing.
the overwhelming
You're doing the
majority of
thing.
drag isn't sexual, then you're fucking high on
If
something.
you
This is
think
my
this thing
question. What
specifically-
was sexual
No, you
about
were
it?
speaking
Is it the women's
specifically
clothing? Is
about
it the
this-
dancing? Is
No,
it the money
What do you
changing
want me
hands?
to apologize for, Dooby?
Exactly this, right? Pretend either I'm left with two options. Either you're like very socially impaired and you just don't
Maybe.
understand the context, right? Which is
Yeah.
then you probably shouldn't be having these conversations in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's option one. Option two is you're doing the virtue signal thing where you're pretending you don't know what's wrong with this picture, right? That everybody else here knows is wrong, right? And you're saying, hey, well, what's sexual? Is licking inherently sexual? What's sexual about tongues? What's sexual about
Why
an
can't
ass
you
cheek?
just answer the question?
It's
if it's
really
such an easy
fucking
question
dumb.
for you to answer,
Why would we
can't you just be
even
like,
ask the
boom,
fucking
CC, there it is, fucking owned by
This is
Why
like
can't
this
you
is
do
like
that?
if
Can I
it's
step
just like
in
if
really quick?
Sure, go for it.
I think what Critical Canadians is saying is you may not be wrong, but I think what he's asked, the reason he's asking these questions is because he doesn't think that you know what you're talking about because you're
Yes.
dodging questions, and then you don't seem to
Yes.
know what you're talking about because I mean, you just keep talking about
So
pretzels and
okay,
getting
so
hungry.
if I were to like point out if Mr. Scott here were to start masturbating in front of a child, right? And I said, hey, that's wrong. Scott, don't masturbate in front of children. Would you ask me, hey, why do you think that's wrong? What's
Yeah,
wrong
I
with
would. Why do you think that's wrong? Give me your answer on that.
Are you like again? This is the thing.
I want to
Are you
know.
like
Tell me.
I have no.
No, but this is the thing. Right?
So if I were to
Because
say,
you
hey,
use-
rape
hang
is
on.
bad. If I were to say, hey, rape is bad, you shouldn't rape people. You would say, hey, well, what's wrong with rape? You know, it's using some kind of force.
It's funny. When you
inherently
talked
wrong.
about this on Twitter, you also use. I'm pretty sure you use the comparison of like a drag show and a strip club, and you use that comparison, right? And that fundamentally shows that you do not understand what it means to sexualize something, and this is why I asked those questions.
Can you explain that? So what? So me,
Yeah, I can
I'm referring to this as
I can explain all of this. You can ask me,
adjacent
hey,
to a strip
CC,
club where you have
why is
somebody dancing
masturbating
provocatively
in front of a kid wrong? And I can answer that for you. But the issue is you don't ask questions, you just make assumptions.
That's
Why
so
is it wrong
stupid.
It's
for the
wrong.
Canadian?
Because you are performing a sex act in which you are using the child
What
potentially.
makes it sexual?
I'm trying to answer, Stardust. Okay, Jesus, I didn't realize I had to
Somebody
fight with
over,
the mod either.
somebody over here using
Is
the
touching
word in
my
the
penis
definition.
inherently sexual?
You could pull a
They're
Vosh
making-
and kick him right now before he can complete it to make him look bad.
Is a penis inherently sexual? What's sexual about a penis?
No, because for a nudist colony, it isn't.
Of course
A
not,
nudist
right?
colony isn't
Okay,
inherently
so the
sexual.
penis isn't inherently sexual. Touching my penis isn't inherently. I touch my penis to pee. That's not sexual, right?
Yeah.
So touching my penis is inherently sexual. Having my dick out. Hey, sometimes I have my dick out to change clothes. That's not inherently sexual. So touching
Mhm.
my penis, having it out next to a child. What's sexual about a child? Nothing sexual about a child. So doing all
You
those
go get
things
dressed at a
is not
swimming
sexual
pool?
whatsoever, right?
Gotta go, guys.
You know how stupid
You seriously are you
It's
a never
really
nude
dumb.
when you go to a fucking swimming pool? You're like, oh shit, I gotta keep the fucking towel on if some other guy sees
Why
my
would I
dick.
be nude? Why would I be nude at a swimming pool with?
Have you never changed in like a public area around a swimming pool?
Not around children.
You
When
know
a
what?
men's
Why the
change-
fuck would I take out my dick around children?
Guys. I'm cutting it off. 'cause
Holy shit!
Rose is
I'm
raising
starting to
her
think
hand
you've
very
never been
nicely.
outside.
I think you're
Excuse
literally autistic.
you, I'm moderating right now. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
First off, somebody gave me $1 and 99 cents to say, can you tell Dooby I said to demote Masakim? I don't know what this is. If this is your stupid mod shit with your fucking Discord server. Then another person gave me $1.99 to say, why do so many people put critical in their name? I don't know. Why are you super chatting me? I demand an apology in the form of super chats. I demand an apology from every single person in chat. Hashtag apologize to Stardust. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, this is rough.
Thank you for the $10 on you. Also, Rose, go ahead.
Okay,
You
so
didn't
first,
read it.
okay, so first of all,
Happy Pride Month.
the question being asked was why a nudist colony is sexual. I'm going to say why I think so. First of all, I can admit that a lot of it is based on the culture I was raised in, right? There are some cultures where it's not sexual, and I can understand that they have a different experience. But in my culture, where I live, the only time that people we see are naked is when they're having sex, usually most of the time. And so when you see someone in a nudist culture, my brain automatically jumps to that is sexual, because that's the only time you ever see somebody naked. So even though there is no intent of sexual intentions, probably, of those people at the nude beach, I still tend to see it that way because of my own cultural experience. That is my personal
Hold on, but is
Yeah,
masturbating near a
answer to the
child?
question when I asked
Is
you what is sexual
masturbating near a
about it.
child?
Yeah,
sexual?
awesome.
Is masturbating near a child okay? Like, what's wrong with that? Inherently.
How old is the person masturbating?
30 years old. The child's 5 years old. They might not even know what
Yeah.
masturbation is.
That's probably wrong. Yeah, because you're jerking
Why?
off in front of a kid.
What if the child is asleep? What if
'Cause-
the child is asleep?
No,
It's
what if
still
they're awake
wrong.
looking at your dick while you're jerking off, right? But
I think
they're
both of those
like
are
4 or
still
5 years
wrong,
old.
'cause
4 or
you're
5 years
jerking-
old. They don't know what masturbation is. They don't know what you're doing.
Because
What's
you're
wrong with
jerking
that?
off in front of a kid. Yeah, what's that?
What's wrong with that? Hold on, what? Hold on.
Is it like an
We just went
epidemic
through
of
this.
drag queens jerking
Touching my
off to
penis.
kids?
Touching my
Wild.
penis is not inherently sexual, right?
You're
So,
not saying
what's
touching
the
your
issue?
penis. You're saying jerking off. Those are two different words.
Oh,
So
so
masturbating.
conversation
Touching
has
and
gotten
masturbating.
way
are
Moving
two
too
on,
different
man.
mature for me.
Sometimes after I take, so I've got foreskin,
We're
right?
gonna be
I'm one of the
on
intact
this.
ones. I'm one of the hooded ones, right?
Okay.
So like sometimes I have to pull my foreskin back to pee. Is that sexual?
I mean, if you enjoy it, maybe, but probably not because
Oh,
you're just
so moving
being...
your hand along your penis isn't inherently sexual.
Okay, sure, I guess. I don't know. If
You're an
using it
idiot.
to pee,
Yeah,
I
this
don't
is
know.
why. This is why when you
What
ask
are you
these
talking
dumbass
about?
questions, when you ask these dumbass
Holy
questions, right? You're either autistic or you're twisting yourself into circles.
Do you
right, to try to virtue signal?
Who
It's
you-
not a bad question. You're all just bad at answering it.
It's your
Something is
listen,
sexual if you're inciting sexual pleasure in yourself or someone else. If that's what
Okay,
you're
there you
trying to
go.
do, then it's sexual. If you're in a nudist
Okay.
colony or a third world country where they don't wear clothes because of climate reasons, that's fine, right? In America, you could even have kinky sex where both partners are clothed, but there's very fucking sexual, right? Someone can make someone else come just by snapping their fingers. Like it's not about that. It's just, are you trying to derive sexual pleasure from this? And if you're jerking off around a kid and the kid's not involved and like they're not doing their own thing, and you're doing that, you are sexualizing the child, and that's not okay. That's exploiting them. That's using them in an action that the child cannot understand or consent to. That's why it's
Wait,
wrong.
hold on. What if I'm watching like adult porn and the child just happens to be there
Is
looking
the
at my
reason
dick
why
while
you're
I'm
being
jerking
so fucking annoying because your friend's watching or something? You're acting so performative that you're grinding this
No,
conversation.
I'm not being performative. You
Just
fucking
answer a
baboon.
fucking
What I'm
question.
saying is that when Critical Canadian asked me these really dumbass questions, hey, what's
But it
sexual
wasn't dumb
about the
because
drag
Rose can answer easily. Easily.
Drag kids to pride bar shit that we're talking about. What's sexual about the situation? When you ask me dumbass questions like that, again, either you're
He's saying
autistic
because
or-
dancing isn't
or-
inherently sexual.
Because
That's what
I
he was
think
asking.
everybody, we're not talking about just
Dude,
dancing.
you've
We're talking
been
about dancing
ranting.
in this dress. In this outfit, in front of the fucking sign, with the dollar bills, doing the splits
Yeah,
with your
the sun-
fucking.
I
ass
think a
cheeks
lot
out,
of us
in front of
went up
fucking
with the
children.
sun too.
We
Yeah.
all understand that that's what we're talking about. So when he's just saying, "Hey, well, what's
dollar bills is a different
inherently
thing.
sexual
No,
with
but
wearing
see,
this kind of outfit?" It's
the
fucking
problem-
stupid. What you're
Okay,
trying to
okay,
do
okay.
is distract from the actual conversation.
Okay, so I think everybody came in here and said that they found it inappropriate, the setting that this whole thing happened at.
Critical Canadian didn't say that.
Okay.
You've never asked me. You've never asked. Ask
yes,
me.
I
No,
did.
ask me.
Yes,
Ask
I did.
me.
I asked you on
What's your
Twitter.
opinion?
I asked you
Ask
on
me.
Twitter where you
Ask
try
me
to
right now.
where you try to
Go ahead,
compare
right
this
here.
to burlesque in
Ask
a
me.
positive way.
Go
Say,
ahead.
oh, well, this is
Ask.
just like burlesque. Then
Just
I pointed
ask.
out that
Take a
hey,
little frog mouth and
burlesque,
ask me.
burlesque is sexual. What the fuck are you talking about? And then you
Hey,
said, oh, well,
CC,
hey, I
is
didn't
this
know
an
burlesque was sexual.
inappropriate setting? Yeah, because like it obviously the double entendre on the wall could definitely be misconstrued by kids. The fact that it is at a bar is a little weird, but although in Alberta you're allowed to bring kids to a bar until I think it's like 9 p.m. So depending on the state laws, it could be weird. Once again, the cultural aspect, right? Is the setting the greatest place?
Yeah,
No,
in a
is
lot
it
of
better
countries-
settings?
in a lot of
Yeah,
countries-
absolutely.
In a lot of
Blackface
countries, bars
sexual.
are actually a family atmosphere.
Yeah.
Is blackface sexual?
The problem is you don't ask questions, you just assume.
Blackface is
Hold on,
totally
because
sexual.
I
That's why
assume that the person
disapprove
I'm
it.
speaking to has like a normal level of like social understanding, right?
Yeah, I would too on how to
That's
answer
the
questions,
issue.
but apparently I was wrong. My bad.
I answered your questions and then you went further, right? So in one second, So the double entendre. So it's not going to lick itself. It's not a double entendre. Like, what do you think they're talking about?
Wait, if that was an ice cream shop, would that be
That's
a double
not an ice
entendre?
cream shop.
not an
That's
ice
not
cream
I'm just
shop.
asking you.
Fucking bar.
There's multiple
Why
things
would you
that
ask
could
me?
mean, right? That's
We're
what a
talking
double
about what this is in
entendre
a fucking bar.
Even if it was an ice cream shop, it would still be sexual because you're trying to.
I looked it up.
You're
Mr.
trying to do
Mister is a
that.
bar. It's a bar.
It's literally a
It
bar.
is.
It's not an ice cream shop. So why would you bring that
I
up?
know it's not, but I just said if it wasn't an ice cream shop, it would be.
If it was
would
in
be
a- if
very
it was in
clear
an
that
Because he
it
saw
wasn't.
because he saw
Okay.
people on Twitter make that, and he's just throwing out questions.
No, I don't
and
think it
bullet
was an
points.
ice cream bar. Once again, you don't even ask, right? I use it as an example.
Then why would the fuck would you say that it's a double entendre and ask me about an ice cream shop? If it
I'm
were an
saying that
airplane, would it be
sign
any
specifically
different?
could very well be used as a double entendre, but the setting
not
that it's
there.
in. Again,
That's
let
not
me
what we're
finish,
talking
Dooby.
about.
Dooby,
You fucking
listen.
idiot.
Dooby, listen. But the setting that it's in probably isn't the greatest setting to have. But here's a question: if they would have covered that sign, would it have been okay then?
No, for all the other reasons, right? So it'd be
Okay, what are the
it'd
other
be-
reasons? The dancing,
it'd
right?
be more
the
okay,
clothes,
right?
and the
So
money.
if we were to-
Here's
if we're
a
like
question for you.
100%, it'd be like
The
at
salsa
90%.
dancers were dancing on the street in very like revealing clothing together and accepting tips from the public. Would that be inappropriate?
It depends, like how revealing their clothing is, right? So if you took your kid to Carnival where people were dancing with, like titty tassels, probably not a good idea.
Right.
Okay,
So,
well,
like, it really
specifically
depends.
salsa dancing. Salsa dancing is usually
Salsa
like
dancing
dresses
isn't
that are
always
very
sexual.
skin tight. Salsa dancing is very sexual.
It's
It is
not
meant to
always sexual.
seduce the two dancers together. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Excuse me,
yes.
privileged.
What do you mean by sexual? What do you
That
mean
the
by
whole point is to get
What do you
is
mean
to
by
have
dance?
be a sexual object that you're trying to seduce that person into having like love making sex with you.
You think when salsa dancers dance with each other, they're trying to seduce each other into sex?
Yes, that is what a salsa
Well,
dancing
then-
is.
Then again, I'm going back to you're a social retard or the
Okay,
autistic.
I must be. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. So when it comes to the conversation we're having about sexualization, you brought up like the tipping and the dancing, right? And the provocative clothing. I think a lot of issues that people have isn't that they disagreed that some of those things they're sexual. It's that you wouldn't have the same energy if it wasn't a gay guy dressed like a girl.
What?
Wait, hold on. What?
This is something that's happening constantly in music, and nobody really gives a shit. But now we're trying to create legislation.
Plenty of people give a shit.
covered that early on.
No. You covered saying I don't agree with that either. But there isn't this huge social push to try to ban drag.
Oh yeah.
Like so we don't have the same proportionate amount of energy. So clearly, there's more. You're more outraged by this because it's gay dudes dressed.
So now we're allowed to bring up the context.
Yeah.
Are we Bob?
Yeah, I
God,
guess
are
we're
we now
allowed
allowed
to
to bring up the
context,
context? Because before I wasn't allowed to bring it up.
Context.
Right? The relevant context.
You're talking about teachers trying to groom kids.
Yes, it's
not
very
relevant to
fucking
drag.
obvious. It's one portion of like when you only talk about kids at drag shows and you say no, you can't bring up the social contagion that may or may not be occurring. You can't bring up what they're doing to your children. You can't bring up drag time story hour that's
Well, I said
happening
you could
in schools.
after we satisfied like the drag. But that's the thing is
but
like the
this
fundamental
but this
conversation about
but
drag
this
is what we're having.
But this
And-
is what makes it so much more relevant. You're asking why do we have a stigma against one thing and not against the other? Well, because music videos on fucking TV or on the internet can easily be taken away from the children, right? The parent can say, don't do that, right? And that's one aspect. And maybe they're still exposed to it when, when they're on the school bus and like another kid has wet ass pussy or something. And it's like, oh my God, this is the greatest song, right? And they're like, Jesus, like your kid shouldn't be exposed to that. I understand that. But what the problem with gender bending, performative dances and culture being brought to our children is the greater social construct. Because many parents feel that their children are under assault. Many parents feel that these things are not just isolated incidents, like one fucking group of bad parents going to a bar, but they're looking at a larger change in the culture that makes them feel like their children are under threat. And it's not an absurd position to think that when you add when you add that context. So yes, is Dua Lipa with her ass out or like some hip hop video that, since they've fucking existed been, fucking problematic towards women's bodies or other things or like Hooters. I know everyone loves to talk about Hooters, right? Like as if like we would somehow say that it's okay to bring your kid to Hooters. It's not. But like any of these other things as isolated incidents, right, are it's fine to look at that way. But if you don't put it in the broader social context, I don't think you understand why there's such a strong reaction to the drag shows as opposed to other performative things that kids probably shouldn't be around.
Okay, I get what you're saying. You're saying that it's very in our culture now, like LGBTQ shit, right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
I wouldn't say it's LGBTQ shit. I mean, for some conservatives, yeah, for sure, right? Like some conservatives are just going to be against that. But I would say that the idea of like social transitioning of children in public schools and things like that, and then they see Drag Queen Story Hour, and then they see this push for like transgender stuff, and they know that it's happening on the internet, and so they're very afraid that their children are going to be fucked up in some way by this. And so it's not just me seeing other parents at an event, it's the greater context of like, Jesus Christ, what's happening to our culture that is shocking people in such a degree.
Yeah, which kind of brings us all the way back to the social conditioning thing we were talking about earlier, right? With like 40% of Gen Z kids in California identifying as LGBT, right? So this is what people are reacting to.
Just let me burp. Give me.
You should have done it on camera. I know it would have been a beautiful burp. It would have been a beautiful burp.
The first thing I want to say is I think that we're underestimating how present like sexualization outside of LGBTQ is present in like everything.
That's
all
probably
media,
a fair
Instagram, TikTok. So I think that I think that it's a reasonable argument to make that we'll say LGBTQ presentation, or how would you, whatever you'd want to word it as, representation is just as present as like any type of sexualization across the media. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to a disproportionate amount of like energy being dedicated to have the conversation about LGBTQ. That's the first thing, because then you talk about schools. A lot of people online are very afraid because online feels like everything, but the reality is most of the world isn't living in the online world. I mean, would they say like 96% of Twitter lives in like a very small isolated area that's mostly like the northeast of the United States at least. So I would say that. And then also with the social conditioning aspect, with the social conditioning, like I think that it's a lot of people like, yeah, there is a social aspect. I just don't understand why it's so bad and why we have so much energy against this and not all this energy against the other sexualization. Like it fundamentally seems like we just have an issue with kids fucking around with their gender. Is that pretty much what the problem is?
No. Okay. So
It's
when
both, right?
Cuties
But
was
one
out, right? Hold
adds
on.
more.
When Cuties was out, right? When it came out on Netflix, there's a huge backlash to that, right? To children being presented in a sexual way, children acting sexually. So the backlash exists on both sides. Right?
Well,
So
yeah, but
I
I think that movie was trying to. I think that movie was trying to call that out.
It was.
Yeah,
It was about how
I understand.
Yeah.
Hold on. So I understand like what the movie was actually about, when the message of the movie, right? But the knee-jerk reaction from I think most people was, "Hey, this is fucked. We shouldn't have a movie where kids are twerking," right? Separate from any kind of genderqueer shit.
Well, also America used different marketing, and there was questions about the director, and I mean, I think some of it was a bit of a moral panic in some regards, but the way it was marketed, it too, I think, clearly showed that they were trying to appeal to the idea that these young girls were sexualized.
Yeah. Ironically, they were pushing. The message of the film is kind of the message that Scott and I are like pushing. Like, hey, if you put this up in front of children, they're gonna mimic this stuff because this is how children model their own behavior. They model it based on what they see adults doing.
They could.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so but there's another issue too, is that we have like cheerleading, beauty pageants are super normalized across the entire United States, very sexualized, sets every kid
They're
up for,
fucking
like,
gross.
Yeah, but like, see,
Competition
like,
cheerleading outfits are fucking
yeah,
like, really
nobody
inappropriate.
gives a shit. Like people are like, oh, that's kind of gross, but nobody actually cares. And yet we see like one drag show that's for kids, which is inappropriate. I don't like the fact that it's targeted at kids. All of a sudden, we're having like a meltdown, and we're talking about legislation to ban drag for kids.
Yeah,
you
but
see, we only
Just
care.
because-
It seems like we only care because it's gay people that
It's
are
not because
doing
it's
it.
gay people. It's
about
one
the
is
disproportionate
normalized
reaction.
and one is normalized and the other isn't normalized. But also, again, this is why I brought up the greater context, right? Because one is a movement that is designed. I mean, like, read the fucking research on transformative social emotional learning, and you will see that gender ideology is explicitly tied to collectivist philosophy, to destroying capitalism, to destroying the idea of gender, to destroying colorblind constitutional law, and to bringing down Western society. It is
Do you think that's what
specific.
drag people are doing, though?
No,
Like,
that's
when
not what drag people are doing.
I feel like we're getting a little deep. I know what you're saying. There are
Right.
people that
There's
tie those
a
together, but
greater
that
fear
doesn't
and
mean
a
those things are
greater
inherently
context.
tied. But, but there are people who tie them
you
together
made the
through
claim,
particular philosophy.
Right. But you're making the claim, well, I think we just care because it's gay people. And I'm saying there are other
No.
legitimate fears here that people are like, what the fuck is going on with our culture and society?
I don't
And yes,
know.
the
I don't
other
know,
is
guys.
still wrong, but it's normalized.
I feel like I've seen the sexualization of cheerleaders for decades. I've seen the sexualization of schoolgirls for decades. Everybody has like their porn fantasy where it's like a schoolgirl outfit is involved or a cheerleader outfit is involved. And you can't tell me that these girls who are like, who have barely gone through puberty are not being sexualized in the dance routines.
Nobody's
that they're
saying
doing
that.
every
And
day in
groomed.
high school.
Nobody's saying that.
Much more often than the drag stuff. Much more often.
Right. No, nobody's saying that. What
Are
has
you
happened?
afraid that is
what-
it
what's
making you
happening-
horny? Is that why you're afraid of it?
I'm not afraid.
Not the kids, not the kids, the drag.
Oh, dude, I have said on stream multiple times that like I love trans people. You can call me a fucking chaser all you want. If you pass as a girl, I'll suck the soul out of your dick. I don't give a fuck. And
Hey,
furthermore, I actually have a drag show based off of Mulan that like I like kind of write and stuff that like I would really love to do one day, but it'd have to be secret because Disney are some motherfuckers and they'll immediately come after you on copyright. What we're talking about is whether or not we're exposing children to ideas, identity, gender, and sexual
definitely
themes that
are.
they're not ready for. So no, it's not a fear
Well,
of,
they're getting
of
exposed-
homophobia for me.
Well, they're getting exposed to it anyway. It's just a heteronormative version of it, right? So,
Well, yeah, well, two wrongs don't make a right.
Effectively, two heteronormative parents are grooming their children to be heteronormative, right?
No, that's how
I would use the word conditioning, but if I was somebody who if I did throw the word grooming around a lot, then I would use the word grooming.
I gave you a
Personally-
specific definition of grooming.
I feel like
I did
want to
ask, like,
every day.
I did
in
want to
high
ask,
school,
like the problem with using the word grooming is it can either, if you try to apply it to this and it makes it easy to apply it to so many other things, and you know, like we have a lot of issues these days with the.
I gave a definition of grooming and people are ignoring it now. I said that it requires triangulation from parents in order to bring people into a sexual identity, religion, cult, political ideology,
Are you saying
and then
that
it requires
Hold on.
love bombing and
Grooming-
special attention.
It sounds like what you're saying. It
have
requires
intent
intent.
to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it says. It sounds like you're saying that, but I don't think people are intending to do that to people. I think that they're just
exactly.
exposing them to
Right.
what they like.
But
that's
I,
most.
I haven't
that's what
called
most parents
anyone a
do.
groomer as of yet, except for specific systems in the public education that have engaged in the things that fit my definition that I gave. I haven't called drag queen stuff like groomers. I never said that. I've just only called it inappropriate and then added the larger context of why people are afraid, why people don't want to do it, and why you shouldn't bring your kids there.
Should we legislate it away from people?
I'm
The
an
ability
anarchist. I wouldn't say
Okay.
we should legislate.
I think
that
Dooby
at all.
would.
Yeah, I would say that it's okay for everybody to have their own prejudice. Honestly, I wouldn't want to take my kid to a drag show either. Probably not rational, but I just don't, especially my boy. If I have, when I have kids, I just don't want my boy to be more feminine, and that's probably
When I have kids, it's always when I have kids on these on these internet panels. It's always when I have kids. Who the fuck here has kids beside me?
Listen,
besides me, who's got kids? All right, Critical Canadian does.
Cat.
No, I don't have kids. I'm fucking.
That's
All right.
count. I'm sorry.
I think it's okay to have your prejudices as long as you
just
don't try
fucking
to
with you,
force them
Papa.
onto society. Because I don't think you could come up with like a real, truly
I
harmful
think-
narrative when it comes to like.
I think
conditioning
society
people
is
to be
about.
LGBTQ.
I think society and making up like the social construct is about forcing your prejudices onto people around you. Like, so it's fine.
I fucking hate frogs so
That's
much.
okay.
But wait, if you want your son to be masculine, isn't that exactly what Fabian here is saying, but just in the other direction? Is a bad thing?
Yeah, conditioning my kid to be more masculine. Yeah, I'm saying I'm
No, people-
saying that I have a prejudice in some capacity, but I wouldn't assert it onto everybody else. I just really wouldn't want my kid in general to be feminine.
But you're still then asserting it onto your kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I don't know what your point is when you're asking me that question.
Well, I mean, it's just saying it's bad to do to other people, and then you're saying you do it to your kid. And I'm
When did I say it was
curious why
bad to do it to other people?
You're talking about it's bad to push your prejudices. on other
This is a false dichotomy to compare.
I was talking about how you shouldn't put like just from a societal perspective, you shouldn't like push your prejudices in that capacity. Like just because I have my own prejudices, that doesn't mean that I should make everybody have the same prejudice by legislating the lack of access to like drag shows.
This is a complete false dichotomy. This is a complete false dichotomy. To compare your ideas of what masculinity is or isn't, and to say that you want to teach your children and instill in them certain temperament and certain things, like certain values that you have, as opposed to whether or not, or what, no, as opposed to whether or not individuals can be socially transitioned to another gender, and that has obviously shown massive rates of suicidality, massive levels of trauma and things of that nature.
Well,
that might go through detrans, right? Like there's a whole other fucking hornet's nest of shit that is different than saying socializing someone into your idea of masculinity, and then like socializing them in such a way that might cause them to be improperly fucking transitioned.
Okay, Scott, I want to try this hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
What if a father believes, you know, let's say let's extract this from what we currently know of our society, but let's say that a father believes that peak masculinity, and he wants his son to be like very masculine, but from the father's perspective, peak masculinity is like floofy dresses and flowing wigs and makeup.
So the father is he mentally ill in some regard and has abandoned his ability to take care of his child because he's incapable of being able to like view the world in reality? Because it sounds like this person belongs maybe in a mental institution.
Just if he thinks has peak masculinity.
Yeah, well, he's probably got mental issues. He probably needs help.
That's based on the way that you're viewing masculinity right now. But these terms are constantly changing, right? What we thought of as masculinity 100 years ago is different from what we see it as today.
Yeah, in 100 years ago, if he thought high heels were appropriate, right, because they were based off of military uniforms from steppe people. Well, yeah, military uniforms would have still been that way, like Cossack inspired, like 200 years ago. But yeah, you're right.
Years ago for that,
but fair enough, right? If you thought peak masculinity was relevant in the social context, yes. If the relevant social context is that masculinity is flowy dresses and makeup, right? Then I don't see an issue there. But if we're talking about in the current context, peak masculinity is makeup and dresses. It sounds like you're talking about someone that's like really not adapted to being a parent. Because they don't understand what reality is.
200 years from now, that could be peak masculinity.
And if that's what peak masculinity is, then there's no mental issue there.
But how do you think it got from 200 years ago to today?
Yeah, exactly.
What do you?
Little by little, what we understand to be masculinity and femininity are changing constantly, right?
That is a complete aside from, and again, you're re-engaging in the false dichotomy. That is a complete aside from trying to actively take your children to things that are engaged in gender bending, and as opposed to what do we represent masculinity and femininity with in the social fabric of today's society, or what it was in the past. Like you're comparing apples and oranges.
I would say that Kate McKinnon is very feminine and does.
I don't know who Kate McKinnon is. I'm sorry.
Kate McKinnon is an SNL actor, and yet she does male impersonation, and she does it very effectively. She's the one who did the Justin Bieber impersonation on SNL, and she is somebody who, normally the way that she often looks is she looks feminine, but she will play these masculine roles and she will do it very, very effectively. And this is something that, it's not like, well, she'll imbue some sexuality into it for the role at times, depending on the character that she's playing. But it's like something that is just sort of, she's good at it. And we don't really see this as being a problem. Right?
Because you don't let your toddler watch SNL. Like there's an age appropriate time that you watch SNL. Right? There's there's intentional racist jokes that the news report, I forget what it's called, the Josh and oh my God, what is it? Shay, I can't remember his last name. Michael Che, sorry. They write each other's jokes to be intentionally offensive and racist for each other, right? Like this is not something that you would bring your toddler to. Like, this is what we're talking
Yeah.
about, is that it's not appropriate for certain ages.
Well, yeah, but a toddler, I don't think knows dick about shit. Young kids still
Okay,
watch SNL all the time.
Well, you
know
shouldn't.
what I mean?
You shouldn't let your 8-year-old watch SNL. Like,
Yeah,
that's,
you probably shouldn't, but like if I did, nobody would really give a shit. But if you have your 8-year-old watch a drag show, we're gonna legislate against it. You know what I mean? Like we care
have
more
you been
about.
to a drag show, Papa?
I was watching SNL when I was
can't
like,
wait.
I
You
was
should
watching
go.
SNL when I
They're
was
fucking
like,
fun, and they're super sexual.
I'm sure
Why
they are,
isn't-
but I'm sure there could also be non-sexual drag shows, which there are a fair
Yeah,
amount of
plenty.
non-sexual drag shows. Yeah.
Well,
Adam, but
for
why
instance,
isn't that just taking the
drag story hour is non-sexual.
Except
right?
for the
It's
person
weird.
that founded it apparently is a child molester, and they just had a fucking drag
Really?
queen like show their fucking dick by accident at one of these. But I mean,
I didn't
fair
know.
enough.
No,
Is that sexual?
No,
Cite your
the
sources.
one who showed their dick.
I'll find the article.
That was somebody else. That wasn't a drag story hour thing. They were at a
Different
a
event. It was
children-
just
It was
the-
a children's library thing that they showed
Mhm.
up at as like the entertainment, and yeah, they had a really way inappropriate outfit for kids, which that I think we can all agree is wrong. But
Well, who's more wrong though, the
I don't know if
the
Canadian
drag
would go this
person,
far.
or is it the parents taking their kids there? You know what I mean?
well, it was
both.
the venue was appropriate. The venue was like a children's event for a library or something like that.
In that event, I would say the performer failed to meet the reasonable expectations for how to conduct yourself in that setting.
Yep.
Yeah. And that, I think, is, this is a problem all around. It doesn't matter if you're gay or if you're trans or whatever. This is something that exists in the world, and we should be protective of children regardless of what what box they fit into or don't fit into. So I think we can all agree,
All right, hold on,
having
pause. I gotta take an L. It is a CEO that was a major donor and sponsor to Drag Story Hour. I misread it. I take that L. Misinformation from
you gotta cite
Fabian
your
Liberty
source.
Scott. Harmful disinformation. Luckily, I'm not streaming on Twitch tonight. I fucked that up. It just happened to be a CEO of Cream City Foundation that was a large sponsor of Drag Queen Story Hour. My bad. Harmful misinformation out there, boys. We do the best we can to correct
Now,
that.
thank
Y'all
you for
continue.
correcting that.
You shouldn't do that. So, like Roger Stone says, you attack, you never, ever defend, ever. Just keep fucking attacking.
Very true.
Well, I always do the best I can to stick to the truth, no matter what that means.
I don't know if
Anybody
Roger Stone's
wants
gonna
to
appreciate
weigh
those
in
frog
who
lips on his
hasn't
ass.
had a moment yet that wants to weigh in. I want to give
Nicholas.
people who maybe. Nick
Do we
or
really want these
Rose
people to talk?
or-
Let's be real.
All right, I'm going to use the restroom. I'll be right back.
All right.
Yeah, I don't have
Yes,
the
thank
input of a Discord moderator.
Do you think that drag is kink?
I think drag can be a kink. I don't think it's inherently a kink.
Do you think kink around
I
children?
think anything can be
is
a
okay?
kink.
Do you think kink shaming can be a kink?
Maybe.
Do you think
Nicholas has
kink
no
around
position.
children? Do you think kink around children is okay? If drag is a kink, is it okay for that kink to be around children?
I don't know if we're doing the RGR thing and we're like, well, this person has a foot fetish, but they're walking barefoot outside, and now they're making this guy fucking like have an orgasm in his fucking pants looking at it. I don't think it's inherently like, I don't think that person would be like a fucking pedophile for walking barefoot at a pride event or something. But I think it depends on what the action is.
If you're going out trying to like turn someone on, you're like a piece of fucking shit. If you're trying to do that around kids, like easy. I don't care what the fuck it is. Like
Oh, I just sorry, Stardust. My bad. Oop.
What?
Nothing.
Anyways,
Stardust, do you think drag is a kink?
I don't know. I'm the moderator. Of no opinions on any of this. So
Stardust, do you think that moderating a panel is a kink?
Can you guys hear
one of
me?
those-
Now we
Yeah, we
can.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
sorry.
you moderate a panel in front of children, are you a pedophile?
Okay, no, it's okay. It's like one of those self-punishment things, right? Like only somebody who hates themselves would continually do this over and over again, week after week.
So it's a masochism thing.
Yeah,
All right, fair enough.
yeah.
Keep the kids off of Stardust panels.
What were we talking
agree
about?
with
What
that.
I miss?
For me.
What are we
Agree with
talking
that. Get
about?
this fucking frog out of here. Get this kid out of here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit racist.
We're not talking about anything. All right, fair enough.
All right, where?
Yeah,
where
no,
are we?
they've given up. They've given up
Oh,
on
yeah,
defending their moral position.
Okay, so when you say that drag is kink, I think that drag is inherently kink, and I think you look at drag performers. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel. This guy who I was friends with, who was a TikToker, collaborated with TikTok, did all these things, and
What
he
was
would
his
like
name?
literally. His name's Victory Ryder. He would literally make these videos where he would respond to children, and like it would be like these sexual jokes the kids would make, and I had to tell him like, listen, the stuff that you're doing, it's incentivizing them to make these comments. It's really gross. And then obviously, like, I don't watch RuPaul, but I remember I was looking up for a video, and I saw there was this one clip of like RuPaul, she-male or female. The whole clip is literally just them making misogynist jokes and then looking at pictures of women. It's like, oh, is this a drag queen or is this a real woman? And obviously, the word she-male being a transphobic slur.
Autogynephilia is a thing.
So what does
I don't
it
know
have
why
to do-
we're
you
asking
said
whether
it's
or not it's a
inherently
kink.
a kink, though?
Oh, inherently
Yeah.
a kink. Because for
That
some
doesn't
people, it's
make sense.
obviously going to be a kink because autogynephilia is a thing. Like, I know we don't like to talk about it because we might get canceled or something, but it's certainly an
I just wanna say-
aspect.
Scott's
Sorry.
on the
Thank
AGP
you,
train.
Beckett. Thank you, Beckett, for the 5 gifted memberships.
I'm on the train that it exists, not that it's like fucking, like I'm not a conspiracy
Money
theorist with it.
escapes me, so.
Yeah. So Rose, what makes that inherently a kink, though? You didn't quite get to that point.
Well, I
Are you-
mean, when you... Sorry?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. So first of all, I think the majority, I mean, there are straight men who do it, but I think mostly drag is gay men, right? And a lot of the defense I see is like, oh, they're just expressing themselves. But it's like drag inherently is an expression of somebody else. And it's like this overperforming, exaggerated of female. And, when you're wearing like these big, like, I don't want to go into detail, but like you're exaggerating female parts and you're like exaggerating the female form. I do think that is inherently kink. There is inherently some of that there. If you want to like express yourself, you're not expressing yourself when you do that.
So
And I've just seen way too many examples of drag queens acting sexual and like making all these sexual jokes. It's like, are there some where they're just lame sticking? I'm sure there are, but the vast majority that I've seen have kink elements. The fact that they're mostly adult shows for adults.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily make it kink or inherently kink, especially not. I think it's that some will sexualize the performance. Many will, probably most. I'd say that most drag shows tend to have strong elements of sexualizing, right? But they're not necessarily getting off on it, right? So it's not necessarily a kink for them. It's more about being sort of a very a highly exaggerated caricature of femininity, or as our culture identifies femininity. So femininity is often sexualized in our culture, in Western culture especially, but in many cultures. And so they're taking the sexualization of women and placing it on a pedestal and then enhancing it and showing a spotlight on it and exaggerating all the elements of sexualized femininity in many cases. I wouldn't necessarily call that a kink. The kink aspect is whether or not you're getting off on doing that, right?
Believe that. I feel like you're just proving my point when you say it's an exaggeration of these sexualized aspects. Okay, this is someone who's looking at something that isn't maybe inherently sexual. They're like, oh, look, let me see how I can make this more sexual. Let me see how I can exaggerate this. Like, I don't know how you can look at that and then say, oh, this isn't kink. This isn't inherently sexual in nature. Like I said,
if I'm being technical,
you haven't
kink,
considered
right?
you haven't considered
so
that
what
word.
it is sexualized. So I think in hypersexualized you could even say, but
Yeah,
kink is something more specific than that.
Yeah, what you haven't considered, Rose, is that we're on a leftist podcast or panel right now. So they're going to tell you that putting your dick in somebody isn't sexual inherently. Having an orgasm isn't inherently sexual.
Bad Face City with Dooby today.
Hang on, Dooby. You know
anal
me.
sex. Hey, is anal sex inherently sexual? Fuck, I don't know. Like we're
Dooby,
going to
this is a misrepresentation. This is a misrepresentation of me. I do not appreciate this. Dooby knows me as being one of the most prudish people he knows. So,
can I confirm nor deny that?
No, but when we say that something is a kink, now the old school terminology for the term kink meant something that was out of the ordinary, right? So it could be used to describe anything that was out of the ordinary, and not even necessarily nothing sexual. But in more recent years, it's become we look at it more because of its the sexual kinks, right? A
Right.
sexual kink would be, I do this thing because it gives me sexual pleasure and gratification for doing it, right? That would be like a sexual kink. So when we
Stardust.
usually talk about the kink at Pride or something, we're talking about people gaining sexual gratification off of the thing that they're doing at Pride. And so that's where like the disagreement is with people for the kink at Pride thing. And there's a bunch of people defending it saying, well, they're, it's just their sexuality, right?
Yeah,
so
most
when we're talking
Pride
about-
events, if you just had like a live camera, like your YouTube would be taken down because you'd violate TOS over and over again.
Yeah, Stardust. That thing
I don't know
you
about
just streamed for us,
most.
right? That image of, I think that was a drag queen on his
Yeah.
back, with legs spread eagle.
Oh, play it again.
near
I missed
children.
it because I was talking.
I mean, we all agree that's inappropriate. It's just like.
Well,
that's-
hold on.
yeah.
What's inappropriate
We
about
share.
having your legs spread eagle like that in front of children? Let's be real here.
I think what's inappropriate is that you're gonna make me kill myself. All right.
Don't get my hopes up, you dumb bitch.
Why so is this like?
I think it's
Ugh.
the genital area that is most inappropriate for people.
But what if it's a nudist Pride?
Look, I like the kid looking over like this. Like that's exactly what I would do too. I'd be like,
Why would you do that in public?
I'm
You
not
guys are,
clicking
like,
it because
I
I'm
take it like
streaming.
everybody's against like cheerleaders and stuff too, right? Just in general.
Have you ever seen
Ah.
cheerleader do that?
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
this is
actually, I
just
was
like
at a cheerleader where they were
cheerleaders.
actually lifting up their legs to show. Yes, their
cheerleaders
undercarriage,
lay down
yes.
right in front of children with their legs spread open.
Well, no, but
Yeah, they
cheerleaders
do it in
high
front of
schools-
large crowds. I don't know if you've ever been to a
cheerleaders
sporting
in high
event, but
schools
yes.
are taught to kick their legs up and show
Yes.
their asses and all of that, and like, and I'm sorry, I feel like we've been teaching girls how to like groom.
Why are we
themselves
circling back
basically
to
for
this?
decades.
Like
So-
Dooby and I specifically already answered this question. I said competition cheerleading even.
Why are you
is
acting like
gross,
this? Why are you acting like this conversation has any continuity? We're just talking. You know?
I just-
Like,
well, I not even a debate. You know what, Papa? You're right. We're just bouncing around.
Is that you guys would have stumbled onto the truth right from the start if you just agreed with everything we said.
I would just like
Very
to point
simple.
out that
Mhm.
we've got a frog, full frontal here, no clothing,
True.
spread legged,
in front of kids,
just showing his crotch here.
Um,
There, and
Kids should
I'm,
not be watching this for the record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like-
I was told it's an 18+ broadcast.
Yeah, but
so
you have me here,
not my issue.
Doobie, and you know me.
Well,
I
you knew
find
I'd
this
be
to
naked.
Very offensive.
So it's not my problem.
I find
You
this
know
to
I'd
be
have my
very
dick out.
offensive.
And if you don't want to be here, don't be here.
This is very offensive, Doobie. You should be wearing shorts.
Something is sexual if it's trying to induce sexual pleasure in yourself or someone else. Nudity is not inherently sexual, and to assert that is deeply problematic. That's how you get people saying that a woman breastfeeding is sexual, or equal laws on acceptable degrees of public nudity are sexual, or condemning just third world cultures where they just don't wear as much clothes because it's hot. And you just get this real brain drain in the conversation real fast.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody made that argument.
Well, hold on, Pixie. To be super clear, right? Like I agree, and I don't think most people on this panel need that like spelled out for them, with the exception of Critical Canadian.
I mean, I think
we
it's
all
kind of fucked
agreed
up
with that.
times here and there. Yeah, I don't actually care what it is. Like nudity is not at all required for sexuality. Like it could be literally anything. It's just is someone reasonably
It does
getting
help.
told to someone else off. I mean, yeah, typically, yeah. But when we're talking about what counts as a kink or not, we're just talking about what's like an atypical means of doing that, of being
Right.
sexual.
I mean, like I would say this, right? That like people are attracted to secondary and primary sexual characteristics, especially primary,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're
Speak for
engaged,
thyself.
if you're engaged, well, okay, Zonia, people that are not asexual, all right, but you know, like we're not talking about bibliophiles, right? Like why do I need to add hashtag not all before every statement I make? You get what I'm saying, all right? But like, so I think if you are using those and they're shown, right? Obviously, it is a lower bar of entry, I could say, right? In the subjective kind of like understanding of what is and isn't sexual, right? Like if I'm dancing and I'm shaking my boobs, right? And I'm fully clothed, one might not see that as sexual as if my breasts are fully out and I'm literally shaking my tatas, right? Like, so there's nudity is gonna play a role. It's gonna play an element, right? As into the context of whether or not something is widely perceived as sexual.
Yeah,
No,
we just
I
make a
feel like-
reasonable analysis based on what we can perceive, and we can't read people's minds.
Right, of course.
Yeah, I feel like we brushed over this earlier, but I feel like I need to make the point that the sexual objectification of women and the grooming, the societal grooming that happens to women, right, from the moment they're born, having like makeup ads and princess dresses, and you need to put on the fucking nail polish and all this kind of shit.
Wait, why are princess dresses sexualized? What are
Well,
you
that's
talking
not that's not just about the sexualized, right? It's they're being pushed into a certain like
Subservience.
not the subservience thing, but also like the way
Objectified.
the way that they express their gender is very much for men, right? Like right from the start, you wear uncomfortable shoes, have your ass stuck out. You're wearing dresses with no fucking pockets. You're putting on all this makeup. You have to cut all your hair.
They need cargo
shave all your body hair.
dresses.
So this is like a mainstream feminist critique of Western society, of all society, right? Is that women are from birth pushed into a very sexualized role, right? So for you to say that, hey, people don't complain about this, well, they do. This is what feminists have been complaining about forever.
True.
Yeah.
What was? Well, I don't understand. What was the point of that? What are you talking about? What was the point of
Well,
what
the point was what I just said, right? So you guys were asking, hey, why don't people complain about high school cheerleaders or child beauty?
Oh, no one said why
pageant?
don't they complain. We said that people don't complain to the same degree as when it comes to a
That's
gay
what
dude.
feminism is about.
Yeah, I feel like I have nothing else to add here because I've already answered that question.
It's the disproportionate
should, but
response,
then
right?
they should, and I think some people are very opposed to those things, but it's but nobody takes it seriously.
Yeah,
Because
like I already answered the question. There's a broader context of why parents are more fearful of gender bending influences on their children, given all of the other things that are happening to their children and the ways that their children are being psychologically harmed and used as, individual tools to establish a new vanguard party.
Yeah, ironically, one of the I think I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. So one of the critiques that feminists have of drag queens is that it is like blackface, right? So feminists feel like society is pushing them to be subservient to men, to pamper themselves up, to pretty themselves up for men from birth, and then you have men putting on these dresses, putting on all this makeup and the fake tits and shit, and playing out caricatures of that stereotype, of this thing that's pushed onto children from birth. Right? So like that's one of the critiques of drag queens from feminists.
What about that
very few.
response? So the problem is that there's such an aggressive response toward drag queens, and not so much toward the other things, which are, of course, as Scott mentioned earlier, normalized, right? So we have the objectification and sexualization of women at a young age normalized across this spectrum of activity, but then there's this other one over here that comes from from people identified as LGBT, and that very much smaller kind of tiny subset is getting a disproportionate negative and hostile response.
Yeah, but like Scott already kind of laid out why.
Yeah, I've answered it like 4 or 5 times.
So we just need to normalize the LGBT portion, and then everything's okay.
No,
well, we've agreed.
We
that
disagree with
everything's
both of those things. We say both of those things are bad, and then the whataboutism, is not really an argument when we disagree with both of them.
Yeah, we agree that the other thing is bad. You're saying, hey, let's normalize this other bad thing because the first bad thing is normalized.
Are you saying that the gay people are bad? Is that the bad thing you're talking about?
No, that's not. No, that's not.
So if you
so
guys...
the sexualization and like what the existence of the LGBTQ community, like what is the other thing exactly?
Exposing children to gender bending ideology and performative art to children that are unable and unsure to be able to identify themselves, and instead of having a default position of the fact that boys are boys and girls are girls, and confusing them with an ideology that they can't possibly comprehend, and likely can't fully comprehend until they're all the way, or at least most of the way through puberty, as like a normative thing, is something that I would say is horrible, and we shouldn't be doing that to children.
What do you think what do you think is really difficult for children to comprehend about drag shows? Like, what's the impossibility to comprehend? Like, it's just gay dudes dressed up like girls. for fun.
Again,
not always
I'm
gay,
just
by the way.
saying.
It's again,
Okay,
it's
but
the
most of the
it's
time, yeah.
again,
Most of the time,
it's the context, right? You in that specific situation, all that is a somewhat confusing and weird thing, right? Like by itself, isolated completely without any of the other context. What you get is a bunch of kids going, "What the fuck is happening here?" Probably thinking that these people are super weird and strange, but it's not isolated. It's not by itself. Like even when you look at the video, even when you look at the video, right? And the video evidence and the photos from the specific incident we're talking about, drag your kids to Pride. There's 2 t-shirts that you can see that very clearly tie this to the overarching context. There's a young boy that is, or presumably a boy, that is wearing a t-shirt that looks like it says "Don't mess with Texas," and it says "Don't mess with trans kids." Right? There's no such thing as a trans kid. They don't exist. There are children that have gender identity disorder and gender dysphoria. No, you were never a trans kid. You were a child with gender dysphoria, and your psychologist and your
isn't that like the same thing though? Like,
no, it's not. There's no such thing as trans kid. I'm actually quoting Buck Angel here, if that makes you feel better.
Well, Buck,
secondly, I'm gonna add the other. They are children. They're not trans. They're not trans kids. Okay, they are kids with gender identity dysphoria. Okay, or sorry, gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria, depending on which definition you would like to use. They're not trans kids. They don't exist.
Gender identity dysphoria, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, what's the outcome of somebody with gender dysphoria?
Well, 90% of the time they're comfortable as the cis body that they're in. So it's 10%.
Diagnosed gender dysphoria. I just want to see a statistic on that. I'm just very curious. So you're saying that diagnosed people with gender dysphoria? This
isn't like a contentious statistic.
No,
right? Afterwards I can send it to you. But the overwhelming majority presume that realize that they're just lesbian or gay or bisexual. That they had a temperament that was differently. And then there's a small minority of them that are just like, yeah, no, I was just playing with gender at that time. And then there's a minority, a very small minority, that when left to their own devices and when not given gender affirming care, maintain a happy, healthy life as the body that I'm sorry, a small portion of them, 10%, that are such as Rosemary said. The second t-shirt, though, because I got attacked without being able to say what the second t-shirt was. The second t-shirt is a young black girl that's wearing a rainbow skirt, and it says equality, and then it says equity, and it uses the E, the Q, and the U, right, for both words, so that you can understand that equality and equity is the same thing. There is a political indoctrination and philosophy that is present even in the fucking video that we're seeing.
Dude, everybody's families who have any kind of political agenda have political indoctrination for their children, right? Same thing with religion. There's religious indoctrination in families. So this is no different from any other politically aware family in the
That's
US.
bullshit and you know it. That's bullshit and you know it. Just try and say that they're completely disconnected is bullshit.
Dude, there's
you know
there's kids showing up to anti-abortion protests saying, with pro-life shirts on and shit, right? And going to MAGA rallies with
that doesn't in any way shape or form say anything about whether or not these things are connected, which they are.
Wait, so can I ask Papa?
It doesn't matter. Everybody's doing political. Well, not everybody, but a lot of families are doing political and religious indoctrination of their kids. So are you going to shame them as well, just as much?
I don't think it's reasonable to compare that to transness, which most trans people have like gender dysphoria, which is like a mental health issue, right? So like that's
when you're
on the level of like. But can I say something really? I just want to ask Papa got a question, if that's okay. Pretty please.
Sure, go ahead. And then after I want to talk about this statistic of like 90% of kids detransition.
Yeah, Mr. Gutt, do you think that for a person to be trans, they need to have gender dysphoria?
No.
Okay, well then, yeah. So if you would say yes, then you'd be right in questioning what Scott said. But given that you and a lot of other trans allies,
I don't.
So that you don't need to have gender dysphoria to be trans or to be put on puberty blockers or HRT and any of this shit, right? Then what Scott said is correct. It's 90% of those people, children who identify. 90% of children
Oh,
who
no.
identify as trans, right, whether or not they have gender dysphoria, right, when they go through puberty, no longer identify.
It sounds like it sounds like you knew I was looking into this and you tried to get ahead of what I'm trying to say because you made
that's the typical argument.
Sure. So So you made the assertion that 90% of kids that get diagnosed with gender dysphoria end up detransitioning.
That's not what I
after.
said.
That's not.
I'm
what
not
I said
talking to you.
I didn't say they were diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
Oh, so then it doesn't matter.
They identify as trans.
Hold on. You specifically brought up gender dysphoria as like an argument. It's 90% of kids that identify as trans they might stop identifying. That's different than gender dysphoria.
Okay, but look, if you look at the current, like the way that the APA handles these, like you have to fucking you almost have to assert that if a kid says that they are identifying as trans, like it is difficult and in a possibly career-ending prospect to give them appropriate psychotherapy. At this point in time, the push for gender-affirming care is so fucking strong that psychologists, masters in social work, and counselors are afraid to give proper psychotherapy in order to even.
There's a difference between a push for gender-affirming care versus a push to over-affirm every single person that goes to a therapist.
No, gender-affirming care isn't psychotherapy. It's not. It's pseudoscientific garbage.
You throughout this conversation, you've conflated a lot of different words together. So it's like. Okay, there is a push to implement more gender-affirming care, but that doesn't mean that every single person that goes to a therapist is going to be misdiagnosed or like pushed into gender-affirming care. Usually when people push for gender-affirming care, it's mostly like access to more, gender-affirming care, different types of transitioning tools, I guess you'd say, like different type of surgeries, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not the same thing as saying that every
gender-affirming
that's not the same thing as saying every. But you're not saying but what you're saying specifically, you're using the term gender-affirming care to blanket it. What you're specifically trying to say is that we have an issue of over-prescribing or over-diagnosing gender dysphoria for kids and pushing them to transition rather than to properly explore. Those are two different things, and you're conflating them into one.
I'm not conflating.
I want
them
to
into
pass
two
it
things.
to
They're
Rose.
part of
I
the
think
same
Rose has
problem.
been waiting. So
Yeah. Okay, first of all, as a transgender woman who's transitioned early, I want to say when it comes to regret rates for hormones and surgery, when they actually take it, it's incredibly low. Like everyone says this, like when you're talking about the 90%, that's like people in their early childhood who express some feelings of like gender nonconformity, right? But the problem with this is that no one is pushing them to transition. I'll explain this, right? Because in those early years, they can just socially transition. You let them do what they want. They're like 5 years old. Okay, if they want to wear a dress every once in a while, so what? They can decide for themselves whether that's the case. And most of them probably won't transition. But if they get to that age of like 12 years old where they're at puberty, then you can have that conversation. And if they're still identifying as that gender all of those years later, that's the 10%. Those are the people that are trans, and those outcomes are the people that transition at that time. It's very good.
That's also not true because we do not have enough long-term research. We're just now starting to.
Well,
get
you just
long-term
proposed
research.
long-term research though, and then you're saying now we don't have. Yes, you did because the research I looked
Papa
up was
God, you don't know what you're talking about. Let me finish.
Well, I do
my
because
sentence.
I read into what you're talking about, and they were
No,
talking
you
about.
haven't. No, you haven't.
Yes, I literally just did it.
Yeah,
and they
you
were talking
just
about-
Googled some shit. Let me finish my sentence.
That's what you did, and you.
No, that's no. I went to grad school. Like,
no, I know.
Fuck
but
off.
Well, that's great. People go to grad school. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily intelligent. In this case, what the study said here was that what had happened is that there's gender dysphoria
there's
and gender
multiple
identity
studies.
disorder. There was the claim that it could be misrepresented because gender identity disorder was overprescribed, especially just for gay boys, and they would just prescribe it. It's like, yeah, it's a very out of context study, and you constantly keep pushing these like very out of context things. Before, you had to correct yourself because you gave us like misinformation. It seems like you don't do a whole lot of research on the research that you like to promote.
Papa Gut, you don't know what you're talking about. Let me finish the fucking sentence.
Okay, go ahead. Finish the sentence.
So you're talking about two different things in terms. First of all, we don't have a lot of long-term research. We have preliminary long-term research because this is a relatively new phenomena that we are seeing as large in numbers as we are currently seeing. Second of all, of this much larger group, we're starting to get long-term research, and what we find is that male to female takes a little bit longer than female to male, but that detrans really doesn't start to kick in until about 6 or 7 years after full transition, after they feel that they've had full transition, or that they've been that they stop going to gender clinics, specifically in the UK is a good example. And male to female, it can take up to 10 years. So we're going to need more time to know what the actual rates of detransition is. What we are talking about is minors that identify as trans and whether or not they go through with the entire process, which is only about 10% as we have it now. Now, granted, there are some studies that are like in the 60%. There are some studies that are above 90%, but generally people accept the idea of roughly 90%.
Yeah, can I say really quickly? You brought up, them taking these puberty blockers, having access to this when they're like 12 years old. So one of the most progressive places on the planet, right, Sweden, and specifically with this issue, they're very progressive, right? They've recently decided that they're actually going to like very harshly restrict puberty blockers and any kind of like medication for people that are under the age of 18, because they've run into all these issues, right? They've run into issues where people who have autism, right? And I think it's like 25% of trans people have autism, right? As opposed to like 5% of the general
It's
population.
the big three. It's ADHD, autism, and OCD. Those are the big ones.
And they found that people with autism might fixate on the concept of gender, and this might lead them to identifying as trans and to feeling like they have gender dysphoria when they actually don't. So giving them this medication, giving them this medication very young, can be detrimental to them because it does have long-term side effects.
It's a little bit different for us who are for autistic, because a lot of us don't have strong ties to gender identity in general. So like that's kind of, I identify as a woman and tend to express that way, but I don't have like a very like super strong ties to it. And I grew up being kind of somewhere in the middle.
Right. So this is why Sweden, one of the most progressive places on this, has decided to restrict puberty blockers for people under the age of 18 for these reasons, right? Because it's not there are long-term consequences. It is detrimental to people who aren't actually trans and then decide to stop taking them. It doesn't just go back to normal, right? And because a lot of the people that they were identifying as trans or having gender dysphoria weren't actually trans. They just had autism and had fixated on this concept. Right, so that's not to say that all trans people with autism are this way, but they found that a lot of them were. So they're pulling back and they're saying, "Hey, we're going to be way more rigorous in how we're dealing with this." And rather than the gender affirming care thing, we're going to go straight to psychological and psychiatric care.
There's a ton of research that needs to be done. No
give
one
the floor to
knows
the
why.
comedian.
I'll say it
Sorry.
super quick, but no one
Yeah, go
knows.
ahead.
No one knows why cluster B personality disorders are so fucking high in the transgender population. We don't know. We know that narcissistic personality disorder, and we know that borderline personality disorder are way, way more prevalent in the transgender community. Is that a societal issue? Is that the way that they're treated? Is that the trauma that they go through in the transition process? Or is there something else there that is a problem, that is an underlying thing that we're not fixing because we're just putting people into gender affirming care? There's a lot of issues with
Well, you keep saying they're just putting people in, but every statistic you've given, like 90% of people that detransition. I just need to see statistics, because you said 6 years later people detransition. What does that mean? Because that's nothing is saying that like what trans women detransition after 6 years. None of that is holding up. I can't find a single statistic.
What he's saying, there's a really good article on the cut. So look up the cut detransitioners or desistants, I think is the word. Right, and you'll find it gives you the criticisms of the studies, because there are multiple studies on this. It gives criticisms and the researchers' responses to those criticisms. It's a very well-rounded study. I'm sorry, well-rounded article.
Yes, I want to give the floor to Canadian now.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a older question. It kind of came up. I'm kind of curious, Fabian and Dooby, when do you kind of think that parents should start the conversations of gender and sex? Is there a certain age? Like if your kid came to you now, like at any age, is there questions that they could ask that you would answer, or is there like questions you would wait on? Would you give just very basic
Can you be more
answers?
specific? Right, because
Yeah,
like when do you talk about gender? Well, fucking all the time, right? Like,
Well,
you know what I mean?
That's what I'm curious though. Is like if your kid brings it up to you, will you engage with that topic right away? Will you tell them to like save the question for when they're older, or is there certain topics that you try to steer from? Do you wait for your child to bring it up? Like how would you approach talking about these topics to your kids? I'm just kind of curious.
Right, I just need more specifics, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
well,
you would
do you
deal
have
with it in an
conversations like
age appropriate manner. Like, you're being extremely vague.
That's what I'm asking though. If you see an opportunity presented to yourself to talk about like gender or sex, do you engage with it, or do you just kind of like let it slip by if your child doesn't bring it up? Like this is what I'm. How do you engage with these topics?
Again, your question is way too vague. You're asking me how do I parent?
I don't think it is.
And all of the words that I say, like, just give a specific example so that we can understand what you're saying. Because your question is extremely open-ended.
Do you mean like how do you introduce the idea of like transgender people or genderqueer people to your children? Like, is that
just how do
specifically
you
what you're talking about?
approach the topic of gender and sex with your kids? Do you wait for them to bring it
Okay,
up?
so you're
Or
not
do you
you're not
bring
gonna,
it up to them
okay,
with
so
opportunities.
You're
I don't.
you're not
I,
gonna
like,
you're like, dude, just ask the question. Stop asking a vague.
I'm trying to
notion.
understand your parenting style of like how you engage with these topics with your kids.
Okay,
Is this
but-
really that vague of a question?
It is an extremely vague question. Like, this is a
your
stupid
kid
question.
came
There
to
are
you
such things
and had a
as
sex
stupid
question,
questions, and you are asking them.
Would
all
you
night.
engage with it, or would you deflect and like change the
What
topic?
question? What sex
Any
question?
any sex question.
It depends on the fucking question, dude.
Is it
Are
like,
you-
daddy,
So we're
daddy,
welcome
what's a
to
blowjob? Daddy, what does cum taste
Yes,
like?
do kid,
Daddy,
if a kid
or
came to
are
you,
female
if a
orgasms
kid
real?
came to you and said, I saw something on the internet where it was a woman sucking a dude's dick. Would you engage
First question:
with that conversation?
how did you see that? Who the fuck showed that?
Yeah,
to
that's
you?
fair.
Right? Like,
that's fair.
Okay. Like, next, now I have to explain to some degree, right?
Okay.
Because now my child has been exposed to something that I wouldn't
Yes.
have want my child to expose. So I would try and gain information as to where they saw this on the internet,
Mhm.
why their internet wasn't being watched, why they were able to access the internet completely unregulated. And once I figure out all of those things, then I will do the best I can to tailor the conversation to a developmentally appropriate answer given like what age they are. Like,
Cool, that's what I was wondering.
I answered
Because
that
there's a
way,
lot
and then you wanted more, and I was like,
what
"What do
you
you
said
want?"
was very vague. But the issue is a lot of parents won't engage with those questions, right? They'll do what you did. They'll ask where they saw it. They'll kind of shame the kid that they saw it, and then they'll kind of move away from it.
No,
like, there are a lot of parents that are very
like the damage is
very
done.
embarrassed
Like, now
about
you have to
talking about
do
sex.
damage. Now you have to do damage control.
Can I tell you guys a horror story? Can I give you guys a horror story really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So so I run a Discord server, right? And as a Discord server admin, I have a lot of e-vagina thrown at me, right? And over the years, I've partaken a few times, right? One of these times was with a woman who I think she was like, I don't know. So we were fucking around or whatever. Very, very dirty talk in the DMs, right? One day, she DMs me and she's like, fuck, my kid, I left my phone on my bed. My daughter came over. She saw it. My daughter's like 8 years old. Now she's asking questions. It was really fucking awkward. Right, and I felt terrible for her, and she didn't know what to say. Right, she knew her daughter
Dooby,
had
the
seen
home
it.
wrecker.
She knew her daughter had seen it.
Right.
She knew her daughter had seen it. She didn't know how to talk to her kid about this, so I just said, fuck, I don't know, bye. Right, so I don't. So if you're asking me, like, hey, my kid walked over to me. And said,
Oh, I'm so glad you don't have kids, Dooby.
Look, it said, hey, daddy, I saw a blowjob. What's this? Like, I don't fucking know. I'll deal with that at the time, okay? Like, I haven't read a book on it yet.
That's right. I was just curious because like it kind of sounds like a lot of the gender stuff we're talking about. It kind of seems like you want to shield the kids entirely from the conversations until they reach a certain age. That's why I was curious if it's like
that's
if
called
your
being a
kid
parent.
engages it with shielding them entirely.
Shielding them from things that they're not developmentally able to understand. Yeah, that's called being a good
There's a
parent.
difference between doing that and shielding them entirely from a topic.
Well, blowjobs, yeah, you should probably entirely shield your children.
Yeah, I'm
from
not saying go out and
blowjob
show your kids like.
conversations. Well,
hey,
that was the
this is
example you
how-
gave
this is how
me.
you do- No, I asked
The
you. if
example you gave
how
me
you
was that they
approach the
watched a
topic.
blowjob.
Yes, that's not
right.
you showing.
You should
Can do you know
shield
the
them
difference
from
between a
that
kid
topic
seeing that on the
entirely
internet and, like,
until
a
they're
parent
old
showing
enough.
That? Are those the same to you?
No, you
What
should
happens if
shield
they-
them entirely from certain
Yeah,
topics
there's a
until they're
difference
old
between
enough.
shielding them entirely and shielding them when the topic arises. Do you understand the difference?
Because
Dude, I'm with
sometimes you have
Dooby. I think
exposure
you
to
might be
things.
neurodivergent, bro. You should.
Maybe I am.
You should
telling
legit just go
I
to a
did it a few
psychologist,
times.
man.
I said this from the start.
Maybe.
So Scott, sometimes kids will get exposed to things at too early of an age, and then you
I'm
do
gonna
have to
pop
deal with the
out only because it's been a while. I'm not. I'm only interrupting because and I appreciate being on. It's just been like a few hours, so I'm gonna pop out here.
Yeah,
I appreciate
yeah,
it talking to you guys. Right?
Nice to meet you, Papa Gut.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, nice,
to meet you guys. too.
nice to meet you,
Thank you so
Papa.
much.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah. I do want to say it is 10:30. It's been 2.5 hours, so if you guys got to get going. Generally, I try to keep these short and sweet, especially if it's just one topic, you know. So, but
Yeah, I'm probably
or
gonna
if you
dip
wanna
too.
stay-
Were we not doing the second one, which was
That was if
Well,
we
the
ran out of
second
steam.
one-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
But before Dooby and Scott go, I want to talk to you two together while I got you both in the same space.
Well, I'll dip out before you get onto that topic then. So, all right, Stardust, thank you for having me on. Hopefully I was entertaining enough for your panel.
Thank you so much for joining. It's typically I have more than one topic, but
yeah, for sure.
This was a special one, so yeah.
Yeah, good seeing you, Critical.
This fucking petered out.
Yeah, I'll definitely go do that right now.
Thank you, sir.
You know, actually,
guess.
what if I could ask you guys a closing question? How do you fix this and make the world you want to make?
Oof, yes.
Ooh, that's a good
Easy.
question.
Okay.
Who do you want to start with?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay, yeah, I think it'd be
Choose
interesting
you.
to maybe remove a little bit of the social stigma when it comes to talking about sex and gender. I think for a lot of people, talking about sex, particularly around kids, rightfully so, is very uncomfortable. But I don't think it has to be that uncomfortable, nor do I think we need to be very shameful or bashful about it. I think there's obviously age-appropriate ways to talk about these things. I think we should be really careful about always jumping to the like this is being sexualized, because it does kind of play into that over-sexualization a little bit. I don't expect most people to have the view that I have on this, but I enjoyed coming on and giving my perspective. I think just honest to God, just having open conversations with your kids about sex and kind of the nature that they're going to experience online and in the real world is something that needs to be heavily focused on to better hit these things. So, all right,
cool.
Peace out.
Hi. Can I go next because I need to?
Yeah.
Too.
Go right ahead.
How to fix this? I mean, this isn't really much of a problem. It's not a big problem. When I say I support like kids going to drag events, I'm talking about events where drag is purposely redefined and emphasized as just people in fun, colorful, sparkly clothes doing completely normal, kid-safe things. Also, if you're in a conversation about this topic with people who are not applying the same standard to child beauty pageants and cheerleaders or bringing kids to Hooters, I just wouldn't engage, because that's not actually caring about the core issue of sexualization. That's just people with a bias trying to push a narrative. And in general, just fund more comprehensive sex education in schools that's can be like regulated and safe, and not just leave it up to randos to decide where to drag our kids. All right.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks for joining. I appreciate it.
Nice being on a panel with you
Panel
again,
with you.
Pixie. It's been like a year since we were left on a panel together.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. I'm sure she feels exactly the same.
She's pretty
Cool.
easygoing.
Hey, Stardust, I don't know if you know this, but you're the moderator.
Fuck
Well,
that bitch.
I thought I handed moderation duties over to Critical Canadian.
Well,
Fucking
look,
2D bitch.
I just
Not
I
used to it, so
just I love you too. I guess, did anybody else want to go on this question? Who wants to go next?
Okay, I guess I'll go next. Yeah, so I think that the greater context is what is important here. It seemed that a lot of people didn't want to engage with the greater context or thought that it was somehow an entirely separate discussion. I just completely deny that. I think that the bigger problem here is that we have ceded institutional power towards child rearing to the state, that the state is largely in charge of raising our children, and that because of this, they have gained individuals of the intelligentsia that are pushing forward movements and ideas such as gender ideology or critical race theory or critical legal studies or, fourth wave feminism, whichever instantiation of neo-Marxist mixed with Marcusean philosophy that you would like to prefer. They are pushing this and using the state apparatus as a means to damage our children, and that the most effective way to actually solve this is to decouple them from that power and give that power back to the parents. What I would suggest the most important policy we need to do is, first, we need to focus on school vouchers. Then we need to focus on the cost that a child in public school has in terms of taxes per child is somewhere between $11,000 and $25,000, depending on where you live, annually. And so I think parents that make under $120,000 a year ought to be able to give them that money for their children to go to private school or to homeschool instead. There is no reason that we should all be taxed. for public school, and then those who choose to take their children out of these dangerous and ineffective public schools should meet the financial burden of paying those taxes, but not having those funds that are being stolen given to them. So every parent, for every single child in America that is school age, if you choose to homeschool or send them to private school and you make less than $120,000, you should be given $1,000 to $2,000 a month, depending on where you live, so to make it easier for us to get our children out of public schools. And eventually we should abolish all public schools and we should transition fully to homeschooling and private school education. And that once this occurs, the isolated incidents of bad parents taking their kids to drag queen shows and bad parents engaging in certain behaviors like that will not be, will be able to rear their children the way that they want to rear their children. But institutions and things such as bringing them to school, drag queen story hour, and the larger movement that is having such an effect on creating the new vanguard party of our children will be able to be decoupled from those power, and we can actually move towards a society that can look at people that take their kids to these events as the crazy one-off outliers that they are, and the rest of us and our children can be safe.
Cool. Dooby.
I didn't hear most of what Scott said, but I agree with it. And Courtney, I see you in chat. If you want to, make mistakes, I want to help you explain to your children. DM me.
Guess I'll go.
Oh, fuck.
So, a lot of what Pixie said I agree with in her closing statement. And I don't think that drag is inherently sexual. I think it's okay to create events that are specifically for children to experience drag shows, as long as those events are not, containing all the elements of mature culture, mature living, right? Giving money to drag queens dressing very scantily and doing sexually provocative dances or something. I think that's all wrong. I think that we need to also, as the LGBT community, sort of kind of in a way become more progressive almost. And this is something I know Pixie and I kind of exchanged we exchanged a bit on and both agreed on a bit, that we can move beyond this as the LGBT community. There's so much of the LGBT community that gets thrust into the spotlight are these things that are very much like tropes of old school, gay and lesbian culture, right? The drag shows, for instance. That gets a lot more attention and in a lot more of the spotlight and gets defended really aggressively when we're really much more than that. Like, I know that personally, I feel that the LGBT community and how it's represented is often overly sexualized. And for me, as an asexual trans woman, I often feel like I'm kind of left out of the space and not included, in that there's almost like a barrier, like an invisible barrier there that says that I'm not really an LGBT community member because I don't fit in this very sexualized box of LGBT. And when I want to go to a pride event, I want to be able to go there and just kind of be myself and just experience the pride event. But then I have to deal with like a lot of people hitting on me, getting groped, I had someone grind on me a couple of different times. That was really disturbing. And I don't want that, but the space is considered to be very sexual. And when you criticize that element of the space, you kind of get looked at like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you even bringing this up as an issue? Because it's just kind of it's a trope that's just so embraced and defended in the community. And I think that we can go beyond that. I think we can go beyond it and say, okay, that was our past. We were very sexualized and we focused a lot on sexuality and like being sort of aggressively open about our sexuality. But, we've broken past a lot of those barriers. We need to start looking at where we go from here and being a bit more diversified and allowing for more than just these old school tropes that we've leaned on so heavily. And that, I think, is a really important thing to focus on. So I don't think it's inherently problematic or wrong for a child to be exposed to drag and to go to like children specific like functions that have drag there, if we can also decouple that from sexuality and make it a little bit more, just drag without a whole bunch of hypersexualization and such. And we definitely have the capability to do that. There's plenty of drag performers that don't use hypersexualization of femininity to get to do the job. So I think we can move in that direction. And otherwise, I don't really have too much different to say from what Pixie said. So that's my position.
Cool, Rose.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I've been writing everything down. So, first of all, even if like children at drag shows, like even if that's not like super sexual, it's still promoting an environment that's like really sexual. Like it's gonna make the kids interested in drag, and it's gonna lead them down the path of. I just don't think it's good. Even if in this individual case that one event isn't, I still think it's a problem systemically. Also, I don't know how we went from drag queens to school choice. Like this is the reason why we shouldn't be in school. I think homeschools have their own problems. Like they don't have the same standards. Like, you know, disabled kids don't have to be funded and probably not good for social stuff. I understand like that, you know, if it's tax money being used, like, yeah, I think the parents have the right to use that. I just think there's some complicated things. Like, you know, there's some stuff that private schools aren't doing, public schools aren't doing. That's a whole nother conversation. As a straight transgender woman, I always feel left out of the gay community. The LGBT community. If I ever go to Pride, I always feel like I don't belong there. So it's like I've only been to a Pride event once when I was like 14 or 15, and I hated it. It was not for me, and it's weird because like you think as a trans woman this would be my place. I never felt that way, so I can connect to that. Even though I'm like, you know, traditional, I'm just a, you know, regular trans woman. I mean, yeah.
Can I just say, we didn't get into the topic, but can I just say, the thing that upsets me so damn much about Pride right now, is that it really feels like an insult to the pioneers that led Pride. It feels like, I mean, like to me, because like when I think of Pride historically, I think of like the donut shop riots. I think of Stonewall. I think of like Harvey Milk. I think of like, you know, 1973 when police were burning, you know, people alive in a gay bar and locking them in there so that 40 people could be massacred by the state because they were disgusted by homosexuality. Like, and so like, I think of Pride as like, we're here, like we're queer, go fuck yourself. Right. And now Pride is this corporate rainbow capitalism. You know, half of the people there are straight. A quarter of the people there are in leather fucking, you know, bridles and ponies, and it's fucking kink, and it's designed to shock and celebrate degeneracy, which is never what fucking Pride was about. And it seems like a complete and utter fucking insult. But this is a fucking mostly straight dude. I say mostly straight because, you know, I openly said, you know, that one might accuse me of being a chaser from time to time. But you know what I mean? Like looking out, you know, so mostly looking outside, looking in. I'm like, the entire idea of Pride and children and kink all mixed up in one fucking sphere to me just seems like like it seems like it's just shitting on the history of like individuals in the LGBT movement that have had to fight to have equal human rights. And now it's being utilized as something totally else, which is trans rights, which don't fucking exist. Like trans rights are human rights and things like that.
Can I say something really quickly to that point? So I was going to say something else initially. I just wanted to point out that everybody who disagreed with me is a fucking idiot. But and I think that's pretty clear throughout the panel that you guys were intellectually dominated like in every way. But beyond that,
is that so? Really?
But beyond that, I still love you guys. I'm sorry if I was a little rude. I did have a beer and a half throughout the panel. I'm a very light drinker. I'm sorry. And
it wasn't a cerveza.
Shut the fuck up. It's a look. I'm gonna read it. It's a Sweet Touch White Grape Taiwan beer. I don't know what it's very nice. It's very sweet. Anyway, I was watching TV with my girlfriend a week or two ago, and the show came on called The Book of Queer, right? Which
Can I say
is
that your
supposed
first
to.
mistake is that you're watching TV and it's 2022?
I don't like watching TV. She's a TV person. I hate it. I don't know what to
Are
say.
you
I'm
dating a
sorry.
boomer? What's going on here?
She's very traditional. So, so yeah, we were watching TV, right? And the show came on called The Book of Queer, and it's supposed to be about like, LGBT people throughout history, right? Their contributions to history. That's kind of like what I thought the show was supposed to be. And then they get into it, and they're talking about like Abraham Lincoln being gay, and Joan of Arc is a non-binary, and this I forget the pharaoh's name, an extremely important, influential pharaoh in like history, right? About him being gay, and they're showing all these people, like they had the pharaoh humping a statue of Anubis. They had Abraham Lincoln with his ass out, acting the most sexual possible. Like
Wait,
every like
was
innuendo.
Lincoln in assless chaps?
No, he was wearing
Oh.
he was wearing a onesie in bed with a guy rolling around,
I just
giving
want
each other
to.
fuck me
I
eyes.
want
like
to see a
nonstop.
depiction of Lincoln. With
This
the
seems
stovepipe
like
hat and assless
Rule
chaps.
34. This doesn't even seem real.
This is
does,
the
right?
problem.
It does.
Scott, I'll send it to you. It fucking drove me insane because further
Send it
than
to
it
me
being
too.
like,
Actually, no. Let's
further,
just watch party it tonight.
Yeah, I'll watch it. Further than it being like corporate like nonsense, right? First off, but it's like revisionist history, pushing bullshit, easily debunked nonsense about Abraham Lincoln being gay, but Joan of Arc being non-binary. She literally called herself the maiden, right, or the maid. Right? She was not presenting as a male.
She was a maiden of God, right?
She wasn't pretending to be a man or like or non-binary or anything.
I sent it
So,
over
hold
to
on.
Project Veritas, but I actually got fucking just to one up you for a second. I actually got fucking leaks of PowerPoint presentations that were done to middle school Catholic kids at a Catholic school, and they were like teaching them that like Jesus is like Jesus was never straight, that Jesus is actually
Oh, God.
non-binary, and that like if you're against
Catholic school?
non-binary, yeah, it was fucking hilarious. I was like, wow, the Lavender Mafia really went full force.
Yeah, like
didn't they?
there are plenty of LGBT like real LGBT people in history that made massive contributions that you can talk about. You don't need to like make it up, right? You don't need to lie to people, but they can go Google the shit and it's like super.
Alexander
like,
the Great.
Or exactly.
Fucking
And
like the
further.
greatest conqueror of all time was fucking
don't
like
know.
had men that he was with all the fucking time, and was likely why he was such a badass is because he never wanted to settle down and have a woman because he was totally fucking gay, like
Yeah.
straight
I
up
don't know
gay,
why we
not
don't
like
talk
just
more.
engaged.
I don't know why we don't talk more about Lincoln's achievements as a zombie in Vampire Slayer.
Oh God. Okay, but further, so further than all that stuff, right? Like the ahistorical nonsense, like the idea that they're presenting gay people and LGBT people as hypersexual all the fucking time, right? Why? Right? There's kind of like depiction of they're like just horny. They want to fuck everything. They want to fuck each other. They want to fuck the statues. Like it's disgusting. That is not what gay people. They're just fucking. This is not what like LGBT people are. Right, like Scott said, the movement's supposed to be like about, hey, we're people just like you, right? That's it, right? Treat us like people. We're human fucking beings, and they push it like this disgusting corporate nonsense. Where not only are they doing revisionist history, but they're doing revisionist history plus like reinforcing all the terrible stereotypes about LGBT people being like hedonistic sex freaks. It's fucking crazy.
I'm okay with the corporatism. Like I'm okay with rainbow capitalism because that is kind of normalizing things, right? And it's in a way,
Yeah, that's horrible.
it is in a way it's the counter to the more sexually excessive side of LGBT representation, right?
But it's
so
fake.
For instance,
The
if you
problem
go
with-
to
I do want to wrap this up,
I got mad.
guys. That we're getting close to like 3 hours now. So,
Pussy. Come on.
Well,
Look.
before Scott and Dooby drop off, since they're both here, Scott, I'm going to be at your charity event this Tuesday, which starts at the exact same time as the AMA for Roger Stone. So
How long is your AMA?
From 90 minutes to 2 hours is what he said. And for people in chat, that's on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Roger
So
Stone, that's going to
what
be
I'm
huge.
thinking maybe I'll do, I don't know, Dooby, would you be comfortable like giving me more like a window where I can drop out from Scott's
Yeah, of
thing and then
course.
hop over to yours?
Yeah.
All right.
That's fine. I understand there's big things going on.
any
Yeah, and
closing
then-
things from Rose?
Yeah. really quick talk about the conversation. I just want to say I'm a normal girl. I go to Pride. I don't see normal. There's a disconnect, right? You know, I do agree with that. I think Pride makes us look bad. I think rainbow capitalism, profile pictures, all the corporations, very cringe. I don't think anyone actually likes that. It's like they're doing all this awful shit behind the scenes, but it's like, look at us, we're pro whatever. Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't speak much. I blame the estrogen. Apologies.
It's all good. It's
making me
getting used to
tired.
the panel dynamic, right? So
yeah.
Anyways, thank you guys for joining. I appreciate
Hey,
you.
I'm never on YouTube, but I do have a YouTube, so follow me on fucking YouTube.
Go follow Fabian Liberty.
Link it.
I have a YouTube.
Yes, everybody link your socials. So,
oh, let me do that.
Fucking, I gotta go back.
Can't
I was
put it in
watching
the stream chat. Unfortunately, it's YouTube. YouTube is all authoritarian like.
Well, just
You gotta be a
fucking
mod.
just Google Fabian Liberty, like you'll see it.
Google,
or I mean
or-
YouTube in the search
yeah.
bar. I don't,
Search
well, same
YouTube for
difference.
Zonia, you'll
Google
find
owns it. Apple owns it. Or Alphabet. Sorry, dude. I had my two kids, my toddlers, this weekend. I was fucking out of it. All right, don't judge me today.
When are we gonna get to see Dooby and Scott put on a drag show?
We're probably never gonna see fucking Dooby because death threats. I've had a few myself, but
Well, you could do it with the frog.
I am an
talked
extremely toxically masculine person. Like, it's not gonna happen.
Well, at one point, like some of us were trying to plan to make
Somewhere.
a tiara for Dooby so that he could.
My
actually
masculinity
go
is
Okay.
like radioactive. It's just not-
somewhere.
it's not gonna happen.
I don't know where. I've not been able to find it, but somewhere on the internet, like if I ever run for political office, it'll magically pop up. So let me inoculate myself now. Somewhere on the internet is me at a camping like where the whole show choir team, because I was in Capitol Swing. We were ranked 3rd in the nation. Let's go. And we did a thing where you had like a secret gift, kind of like you would like draw out of a hat like a name, and what you would do is you would write secret messages and make them do embarrassing things. And the thing that I did is I went before the entire group in full-blown drag, in a fucking tutu and everything, and sang "I Feel Pretty," and did the whole like ballerina steps and everything. And somewhere on the internet is this video. So I challenge anyone to find it.
All right,
I know at
thank
one
you
point
guys
a
for
few of us
coming.
had-
I'm gonna
Oh.
move everybody out of the
Alright.
thing. So thank you for joining. I really appreciate it.
See you around, Stardust.
Yeah, see you
All
guys.
right, thanks for having me
Thanks
on.
for
I
hosting.
Hold on 1 second, boys. This is my night off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is my night off. Just do this real quick. So, with it being my night off, we're not planning a bunch of content or anything after that. We will be back tomorrow on Twitch, twitch.tv, Fabian Liberty. We might be doing a debate panel. We might be doing some news. I got a lot of news stories already saved up. So we might do a Prime Guys thing. We might do some news. And then of course, Tuesday, we will have our channel. We'll have our charity stream. Big panel scheduled. Aristocracy will be there. Binks will be there. Ranger and Rogue will be there. Sprouticus will be there. Did I say Binks? Corey Campbell, Prime Kais will be there. Hopefully we're trying to get like one more person to fill out the roster. And of course, we might have some surprise guests come in at some point. We'll be doing eye tracker stuff late at night. I will have a debate me on anything section. So you just come on and you debate me, give me a riddle. I will be completely unprepared and I will bring you on for a one-on-one debate and give you your fair time to tell me how wrong I am about something or to make me look stupid. There will be stretch goals. We have a prize during a window for raffles for those that donate. That prize is worth $120. So come on, donate to Gamers for Love. If you're here and you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, click that button, please. We put some of our best stuff here, some of the best debate performances, as well as our interviews and stuff here. We just did a video interviewing Buck Angel, Tulip R, D-Trans Man. We do that. We've got another interview coming up that'll also be here on YouTube as well as live on Twitch, where you can see it immediately when it happens, where we're going to be talking to someone from the Post Millennial, as well as someone that works in there's a hardcore turf. It should be a lot of fun. What did you want to say? Yeah, there's a 10-minute window to enter the raffle. That'll happen, but of course it'll be based off of previous donations, though, right? Is it just the 10-minute raffle? So it's like a lightning round right at the end. I got to look over the documentation later on tonight to make sure we're good to go on everything. Blair White eye tracker win. So when we do the eye tracker, you can donate any amount of money. Doesn't matter what you donate, any amount of money you can donate, and I will watch anything on the eye tracker so long as it's TOS. Donate $1, donate $2, like whatever it is, donate $1 and we'll get it figured out if we can find a way to make sure that it's tied to you. If we can't figure out exactly who did the last donation or whatever, we'll do it via channel points or something. But one way or the other, like, people are going to be able to give us stuff for eye tracker. So it should be a lot of fun. I've got a jerry rig set up here where I've got my old webcam set up next to it so that I can use that webcam for the eye tracker program, because I don't have the money to do an actual eye tracker, but it should be fun. We'll see you on Twitch tomorrow, boys. Again, that's twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty. Hope to see you there. Donate about tree fitty. All right, boys. We're going to go ahead and end the stream. This was just an impromptu thing. But yeah, this is our YouTube, and we are occasionally here sometimes. Thank you, everybody that showed up. Love you. See you tomorrow.